Exertus.
We need to start off with a correction. Back in episode 8 of Sync Quick News, we reported that Schrodinger's cat had died, but that tricky bastard had us fooled. Turns out he's alive again, in at least one of several alternate universes. A team of scientists toying with quantum entanglement took a photograph of this cat stencil where, oddly enough, the photons that hit the camera lens couldn't and didn't interact with the stencil in any way. Life is full of paradox, and that's why we have Sync Quick News.
I like your mode of always on record. How's it going, Alan? How's it going?
It's going. It's a weird fucking world right now, isn't it?
But I just figured I'd allow you a moment of decency.
Oh, you can. I'm used to it all being out there. So.
Okay. Well, I did really want to be all like, welcome to Exertus with your man Alan Green, the synchromistic expert, all that kind of stuff. Because I think, but that's all.
Am I a synchromistic expert? Is that what I am now?
the word expert is overplayed. It just means to have experience instead of just hearing about it. And so, yeah, I would say in people who've been involved with synchromysticism, mysticistic, there's like a whole like school now of people that are all learning about these things. But how many people are actually just experiencing them all the time, And it's kind of like your whole thing is like you can't escape seeing things, right? Like that everywhere you go, you see the pattern and you're like, oh, that relates to that thing.
Oh, totally, yeah. I think this is maybe something we can get into during the show, but like it's always a funny situation with like experts on synchromysticism because it's sort of like it's a way of seeing, and in a way I waver back and forth because there are times where I'm like, there's no such thing as an expert because as soon as you see it, we're essentially on the same level of understanding. Although I guess there is a part of me that does feel like there's something about it's the same thing like I said with like a psychedelics or something. Like, yeah, your first few times out, you're like, oh shit, what is this? What is this? What is this? And once you start to get a map of the territory and a kind of a sure footing under you, it makes it a little easier. So I think there's definitely experience is valuable. I hope I can bring some of that to the table, but I don't know that my shit stinks as bad as anyone else's. So
yeah, I think that's also kind of the point that people miss is that being an expert doesn't mean you think that other people don't have the skills sets or that they're not experts. It's more just kind of valuing your own experiences over hearsay. I think that's kind of what we've come through for a society in the last 10 years. I don't know, gosh, how long have you been doing things? At least it seems like 2010 is when I started noticing some of the cooler things that were going on. 2007, 2010, all of a sudden there was a wave of breaking of the veil, And so then now you've got people that are they refer to things as fake news, everything. And so that's where we were at a while ago, but then now we're seeing that we have been seeing that there's little truths and there's little symbols, hidden in everything. So it seems like it's useful at least to account like your experiences, like, and that, that's why I was kind of curious, especially what you were thinking after the last thing I heard. You did the Team Rabbit Hole show, and then. Well, okay. We should start a little bit.
Start wherever you like. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. However you want to do it, man.
All right. This is how I normally do it. I'd be like, "Hey, welcome to my show. How are you doing, Alan? Good to have you."
Hey, man. Yeah. It's good to be here. It's good to actually hear your voice, and I'm looking forward to this.
Where are you at right now?
I'm living in Richmond, Virginia.
Whoa.
So it's It's an interesting place for a number of reasons. I think we were having this conversation outside of a COVID conversation, right? I would have other stuff to say. I lived most of my life in New York City and then moved to, what is this, like the capital of the Confederacy, that carries a weird energetic to it on normal days. And then I think the other thing, like just the only thing I could really say as a current, what makes that interesting is there's a lot of air traffic over my head, and it's got me wondering, like, well, is that just because I'm in Virginia where there's so many, is that like military flights, or what is that, or am I just paranoid? That's a good question. So,
and tonals,
I'll get back to you when I figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, well, it was that Weird Al song. I ain't paranoid. I know they're watching me. But there seems to be tunnels underneath a lot of the political cities that have snow for obvious reasons that go back a couple hundred years. I got really interested in the history of a lot of these towns, and it's crazy how many like Minneapolis, New York City, Richmond, even in Sacramento and parts of California, they have very systematic ways of avoiding traffic or a threat of some sort of a crisis and getting a political person in and out through these underground transits. So I think Washington, D.C. is always going to be the international political capital for obvious reasons. So there's gonna be things above and below, and it would make you wonder, I think, what's really going on, and Santa Claus and everything else. How young were you think, when you first became skeptical or woke, not just about Santa Claus but about the world? What was kind of your turning point?
Oh, I don't have, like, it's always funny to me when people say really early memories. I don't know if I've done too many drugs in my life that I've blown out some of those earlier memories, or what, but can't say like first Santa Claus or something like that. But I have a very vivid memory. I was raised not strictly, but I was raised Catholic, and that meant like we didn't really do much, but we did have to do the sacraments, right? You go for now you're 7, you go for communion or whatever. Now you're 12, you go for confirmation, or there's these weird rituals at different points. And my mom did make me do those as a kid. And I remember being there, and again, since I wasn't I didn't have a Catholic education, it was really weird to me, because I remember being in this thing and they say, all right, we're going to tell you, it's literally called a confirmation. I'm confirming that I want to be a Catholic, is I guess what the ritual is, right? I'm saying now I'm an adult and now I can say I really want this. It's the whole idea of the ritual. And in that moment, I guess I took it seriously, even though I was pretty young. It's like, goes commentary on what the Catholic Church thinks as adult consent.
Yeah, what is that? Like 13? Like is
probably
about bar mitzvah
like
age, so it follows Torah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's this idea of like, hey, I'm totally saying this is what I'm into. And there was and the guy basically has this thing where he'll say a sentence, and then all the kids are supposed to repeat back the phrase, "This I do believe." And he says something like, Jesus is the Son of God, and blah, blah, blah. And everyone's like, okay, this I believe. And he says some other shit, and everyone's like, okay, cool, this I believe. And then he says, and I believe in this whole hierarchy of saints and all these really specific things. And I was like, wow, I never learned about that. And I was in this moment of do I believe that? I don't know. I never learned anything about that. What do you do? What are y'all talking about?
Boy doesn't know the territory. Yeah.
And then the next thing they say, this whole thing about the devil, and he says, I believe the devil is, or Satan, or it's like this idea of this adversary. And I literally just it was that moment. I remember the first time. It was a really big existential wake up moment for me, in the middle of this thing on stage in front of your parents and stuff. It's having this moment where the guy's asking me about, do you see Satan as this? And I literally just sat there. I was like, wow, I haven't even made up my mind about God yet, and now you've got this whole comic book backstory, and you're trying to tell me that this guy's the villain and this is the good guy. This is what I'm like. I just don't know enough about this. I don't even like. This all sounds so convoluted. First of all, I don't know that I believe it. Secondly, I don't feel comfortable. Like, why are you asking me to swear to something that like seems pretty questionable? And just having that
Right.
experience as a kid was really profound. So I think that would be my first sort of
That's
moment. And I just stopped repeating after, like literally in the middle of the thing. I just stopped, and I was just like, no, this is not. I am not going to stand here and swear an oath that I believe these things that I don't believe in.
Wait, so you say this out loud or in your heart?
Well, in my heart, I thought that thought. I mean, it was like literally, it's like it's a middle of a you're in a crowd.
Yeah,
So
right. You're in a
I
crowded.
just stopped repeating the phrase. The whole like this I do. I literally just stayed silent.
There are
Uh,
some weird traditions that, maybe the Catholics didn't invent, but they sure like. And like, for instance, the shotgun marriage thing is kind of weird. Like, right, just getting married in front of a bunch of people, like and proposing even in front of a bunch of people, so that the other person is embarrassed to say no or something, and embarrassed to give up, and like they're locked out because they have a social obligation to their community. There's some really strange. I was raised Catholic as well. Just even the ideas that of the priesthood eventually becoming celibate because there was just too much money in the Machiavellian priest prince castes that were forming in the 1700s. Like all of these little rules that are even weirder than not eating pork. I gotta wonder a lot about the saints. Like St. Patrick's Day was recently, and they closed the bars for the first time in like centuries. And what's up with these guys who were clearly gods to their local traditions, and then they've become considered Catholic saints, but are they? Like they weren't very Catholic unless Catholicism is just like this hodgepodge of mistoculture. That's kind of what it has going for it, really. I mean, I can see why you're interested, and you think that helped you on your like. Well, if I don't understand this, I better read every comic book. Is that in deeply?
Maybe. I don't think they're. I think it just sort of became the point where I realized I had to start paying attention. I just be clear, I don't think that as, a 14-year-old kid, over the next few years, I'm not suddenly this great free thinker, but I just can say that's like the first memory I have of really deciding that all the adults around me, very quickly realized they were asking me to be. I mean, like I said, the whole ritual is literally saying you're old enough now to decide for yourself, and I'm like, well, guess what? I've decided it's not. This is not what I feel. Which is again not. And again, I'm really into experience, like an experiential understanding of the world. Is to say, I had a years ago. I was married to a very woman from a very Christian family, and they asked me something as we're dating and all this sort of stuff and getting serious. The family sort of surrounds me, not her immediate family, just to be clear, her immediate family's great, but the sort of wider family, we're at some function and they're trying to kind of have the talk with me. And why aren't you accepting Jesus as your savior and all this sort of crap? And I'm like, hey, listen, I was like, I'll be very real with you. I'm like, I've had mystical experiences. I've had what I would consider religious experiences. But at no point did they ever introduce themselves to me as Jesus. And again, that's just my experience. Like, so I said to him, I was like, I'm sorry. The God force never introduced itself to me by that name.
What was your mystical experiences like? What were your first ones and your deep ones?
Well, I would say I've had a variety of drastically different encounters with forces that did sort of identify themselves by name. And I think this would probably lead into our conversation on synchromysticism a little bit, but almost
Right.
like these very archetypal mythological figures. I had an encounter with Hecate, is this goddess of the underworld and of magic, and I genuinely believe this figure who introduced itself to me by name gave me this T-shirt. It's a whole long story, but like I literally have like a thing this thing gave me. I have to like St. Patrick's.
I had a religious experience with Hecate, and all I got was this T-shirt. Is that what the T-shirt says?
Yeah, that's exactly what it says. Yeah. No, it's the T-shirt. So, all right. I had a series of experiences. You mentioned 2010 is interesting because I think probably all this stuff started from around 2007, 2008, got really serious into synchromysticism. In 2010, I had an experience where I, for about 4 days in a row, I had this reoccurring dream, and it was all variations on the same dream, where the first night it was like I had some like big swelling bump on the right side of my head, and it was like maybe there was like a microchip inside, and it had this information in it, and it was like, oh, like they chipped me with some information. And like the second night I'm sleeping, and I have this dream about the star Sirius beaming this information to the same spot on my head. And then the next night I have a dream that was something else with the same spot on my head, getting information again from a different source. And like every night it's a different source, but it's all basically the same dream. The last night, it would have been March 16th into 17th, I have a dream David Bowie dressed like from the Labyrinth, like the Goblin King. He comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, we've been trying to talk to you. I'm a representative of the Golden Dawn, and we're here to talk to you about your magical progress." And just to be clear, in 2010, I wasn't thinking of myself as a magician in any way or anything.
You're
like that.
familiar with the name Golden Dawn by that point? You've been introduced.
I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think I was doing enough esoteric research that I'm sure I'd come across it, but I don't think it wasn't as significant to me then as it was to me now. Like, it was still early enough in my research.
Right. It was kind of like the Catholic Church when they asked you. Interesting.
Sure. Yeah. So like and even in that moment, I'm thinking like, well, this is a cool ass dream. I love David Bowie, but I don't know if I'm that interested. But I remember in the dream, so he says, I'm here to talk to you. And in the dream, I say, hey, man, like, all right, you've been giving me this dream every night this week. If this is something real, if this is a real thing happening, I want you to prove it. And the next day, which was St. Patrick's Day, I'm in a convenience store, and I look at a lottery machine. I'm buying a fucking Snickers bar. And like, here's the funny thing. I had just over like $1 in my pocket. So I buy this Snickers bar. I have like 50 cents left over. I take the 50 cents and because I looked at the Lotto machine, and I immediately knew, just like that absolute knowing, like, like someone's in a dream, like the dream logic of like, oh, I get it in this dream, you're my sister. And like it's sort of like just this knowledge that you someone just know. And I looked at this lottery machine. I just knew what these 4 numbers were going to be. So there's a thing called like a pick 4. So I played the number 1788, put 50 cents on it, that it was come out exactly like that. And I waited around. The results were just like 15 minutes away, and I just sat there and waited. It was, close to 8 o'clock at night or whenever they do the lottery drawing. And I just waited there, and the results came out, and I won $2,500. And I was like, all right, well, that's proof. Like, that felt like that was the answer to this dream in one way. Now, if we talk about that as like what did it introduce itself to me as, the only things is we have Golden Dawn and we have Sirius were 2 things that were mentioned in these dreams.
And David Bowie, which I have to throw my synchromysticism out for that one, which was just not a huge one. But last month, the last thing I've done before air travel was banned was went to Bermuda, because it was like $60 to fly from New York, and it was like the hurricane week. And I went and I drove around the island and I met some dude who took me to David Bowie's house there. So I was just at the David Bowie house. I've been thinking a lot about him, and I've just been listening to the Life Aquatic, David Bowie, Sue George, Brazilian versions of all of his songs like over and over again. So I was like, okay, David Bowie's here.
Fantastic. Yeah, and that's funny. I actually was listening to maybe the day before my bar shut down. That was what I was playing at the bar.
Nice.
Um,
But yeah, sorry, you were seeing the Sirius light information beam. What was the other one? I'm sorry.
so Golden Dawn, David Bowie, all those sorts of things. I said I have the Hecate story is kind of similar. I have this like really intense dream. In the dream, I meet these two like blue skinned people, and they have this like very intense conversation with me. And when I like, there were certain things I remembered what they said, and certain things I couldn't remember what they said. And they say, "We are the Hecatites. We are the people that were here. We are the people that were in Britain before the British." And I wake up from this dream, and I had a habit then of first thing I would do, I guess, now people have cell phones probably is a more normal thing. What I would basically I'd wake up, make some coffee, take a shit, and look at the news, right? Just sort of scan some headlines. And the first thing I see is the headline that says, British Atlantis found. And it's actually an older story. I think it's called like Doggerwood or something. It's this
Right.
idea of that like basically they had found these archaeological ruins
23 miles, and it's exactly the same ring shape also of like the Atlantis design. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. So even though that site had been discovered years earlier and it wasn't really breaking news, waking up from this dream to see that headline, which sometimes like they'll like re-up a news
Right.
story.
Yeah, history sinks happen and things start to show up. Right, totally.
So I'm like, why is so like literally this guy says we were the people that were in Britain before the British, and the first headline I see is British Atlantis found, and I'm like, oh shit, what is that? So then the word you mentioned, like, did Golden Dawn mean anything to me in 2010 when I had this dream where the guy says we are the Hecatites? That word meant nothing to me, not a damn thing. So I Googled it, and I find the only search result I can find is one result saying Hecatites were followers of Hecate, like basically the priest class for this goddess. And
triple face goddess.
Absolutely, yeah. So there's a whole long story that I won't get into. This like adds like really intense.
Well, this is pretty good because I just really quickly want to say, like, I'm on the edge of my seat about this one because Hecate and your story. So my thing is Tartaria. I do like this whole thing on the Tartarian lost civilization. People are like, what is that? Is it like Atlantis? Like, well, kind of. It's the idea that Atlantis was one of a bunch of other reset city-states, including Doggerwood, and one in Spain and one in Portugal and around the world. And that Rome originally, the Etruscans, there were the Thracians, is what the culture has really been, reduced to. But Thrace, it's like Tar Asia. And so the Thracians really loved Hecate. And the other thing is that the H sound down in that region of, Africa and Spain, the Cordoba Caliphate, pronounced it either like an X or a K. So it would have been like Hecate or Kakate, like Kek. So it's very interesting that is your one of your early woke into the idea.
Oh yeah, it was a really intense experience. Like the whole day was filled with these really intense synchronicities, and that's like some of the things were just so explicit. You know what? I mean, if you're cool with it, I'll just give 5 more minutes of this story.
Please do, yeah, please.
Because I'd already abbreviated, but the truth is, I remembered them saying we were the people in Britain before the British, but I didn't remember. I woke up and I was racking my brain. What did these people say? We are the blank, and I couldn't remember the word, and it was like that like thing of like trying to remember a dream. And
Right.
I didn't really have much of a choice. I had made plans that I was gonna my mom was taking my niece to like this public pool in New York, and I had agreed to like meet up with them and go. So I'm like kind of like sitting there thinking, and I get this phone call from my mom, and she's like, "Hey, are you coming to meet up with us?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess I'm gonna come." So I go to this pool, the pool is called Astoria Pool. Okay, and I don't know. It sounds like you've been in New York, or you lived there, or
Yeah.
spent some time there. So Astoria Pool is right under two bridges, and so first off, let's go there. I go to Astoria Pool. I'm in the water, and now I'm kind of like relaxed. Okay, I've like made the trip. I'm here. I'm in the water, and what am I? And like while they're like playing and doing whatever, I'm just kind of like sort of looking around, and I'm looking at the bridges. I'm looking at the skyline, and I'm just thinking, and I'm trying to remember what was this word from this dream. And it was in the pool that the word comes back to me. They said Hecate. Obviously, I couldn't Google. I didn't. This is pre-smartphones. Couldn't just like Google it while I'm in this pool. So I had to wait till I could get home. But I'm just like, Hectites, I have to hold on to this word. But here's the deal. As I later find out about Hecate and doing research on her, her mother's name is Astarte. I was in the Astoria Pool, right? Astoria. Astarte is her mother.
Ishtar bucks.
Hecate is the goddess of the underworld. She's also the goddess of triple passageways, very specifically triple passageways. So like like this forking in a road or whatever. The pool that I was in is, as I said, under two bridges. One bridge is called the Hell Gate Bridge, literally Hell Gate Bridge, the entranceway to the underworld. And the other bridge is called the Triborough Bridge. It's literally this bridge that splits into three, so you can take this bridge either to the Bronx, Manhattan, or Queens. It's this triple bridge, like this weird forking bridge that you can go into the three different boroughs. That's where I was in this underworld gateway, triple passageway place, and it just keeps building from there. But I think that's the essential details of like, holy shit moment.
That's brutal in so many ways. I totally forgotten about Hell's Gate. But just earlier today and yesterday, there's a lot of people on the internet. They're talking about the coronavirus name, Corona, and the sun rings and this idea of 5G and all this stuff. And so there's people that are trying to say we should call it something like Corona Gate. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, if it's light, if it's radio, then it should be like Helen, right? And just in my head, I'm thinking Hell's Gate, and I'm like, oh yeah, of course it has to be that. But hadn't said it or verbalized it yet. So that's also funny that'd be this idea. I mean, Helios also, like, so there's a place called Lorca, like the poet in Spain, and it's named after Heliorca because it's the organization of the Sun City. So there's this other side of it, which was when the Christians said, oh yeah, you know that place that's like hollow earth and it's fiery, that place is warm and bright and the sun, it's bad. It's actually hell. Hell's not good. Like, and then they turn around this idea, but we still think a lot of the time as hell as being this fiery place like the sun that's from Greek mythology, whereas a lot of the Catholic Jesuits think of it or look at it and kind of explain it more like darkness of space and vacuum where you're in emptiness. It's kind of interesting we've turned around the idea of Hecate, and even in the Chaldean Chronicles, right, like they talk about her as being like the ruler over like the earth and the sea, and kind of the mother of the cosmic world soul. Like, she's pretty much like not necessarily evil, but she's been described by the same people that have statues of her at the Vatican as such for centuries,
Well, I think it's a commonality, particularly amongst Christians and Europeans, to associate underworld with evil. Like, we do this, it's literally like Greece has all these gods, and then we put the one, Hades, he's the bad guy, or whatever. Just in Egyptian mythology, it's because we're all terrified of death. Society, human beings in general, anything that is alive sees death as an adversary. Right? So it's one thing we're all struggling against to a certain extent.
The Egyptian side of that's pretty big because it's like, in the Egyptian afterlife, you're preparing for like another world that you're going to, that your soul stays inside of. And I mean, and again, like Hecate being of Hecate, like that's interesting, like the frog goddess of Egypt, which they don't really have as many symbols of because they smashed as many of the they have more symbols than they have buildings because they smashed almost all of the Hecate temples. So I mean, there's a lot behind the Hecate thing. Even the word slave in Britain, right? like slave comes from Slav, and Briton is another word for a servant. And it's because at some point, like there was a total change and transformation. Sorry, you were still going with that story, I think.
No, I wasn't. You're totally fine.
Oh,
I mean,
cool. I was gonna ask also what the T-shirt said.
Oh, so okay, sorry, I forgot the T-shirt. Yeah, so literally, I get home and I Google this thing and I find all this information and I'm, okay, I'm learning about Hecate and all these things and like, oh shit, the bridge I was just under is totally in sync with her, iconography. And just then, my wife at the time says, "Hey, she had ordered a T-shirt from some company, and there was like I don't know, a shipping error or whatever it was." And she said, "So they're offering me a free T-shirt. Would you can choose between these two designs? Is there something that speaks to you?" And one of the T-shirts was, I think, just like a copy of whatever she was buying, was like llamas with like hearts or something. And so you could either have a second T-shirt of what she ordered, or the other T-shirt was a T-shirt with a photograph of the Hellgate Bridge on it. So while I'm researching this, it's like, oh, do you want this free T-shirt that's just, because of the shipping error, you can have this free T-shirt of this picture? And I was like, yes, I want that. Yeah. That T-shirt later comes up for me in a different existential crisis I had years later, where I was tripping watching 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I made the mistake. I don't know if you have familiar with a guy named Mark LeClaire. He was a really brilliant guy who suffered a lot of this is a terrible way to describe this man, because this sounds like this is what I'm focusing on, but we had talked about how he was forced to go to like a therapist, and he would tell his therapist about some of these sync things. And he told me this story about how he saw 2001: A Space Odyssey, and he had this horrible psychotic breakdown in the movie, and it made him incredibly suicidal, and it was this really, really rough experience. And here I was coming at this from this like sort of dorky fan of Stanley Kubrick and being like, what? I don't get that at all out of that movie, So I made the mistake years later where I was watching 2001: A Space Odyssey. I was tripping my face off in this movie theater, and I suddenly and I'm having a great time, and then suddenly I have this thought that says, I wish I could understand what Mark LeClaire felt when he saw this. And something happened where my brain sort of switched gears to try and understand that viewpoint, and it spiraled me in this really dangerous I sort of opened myself by opening myself to that experience. It was a horrific nightmare evening from that point on, where I believe I understood what he saw, and I had this freak out where I'm like, oh shit, I'm wearing this Hellgate T-shirt, and I'm like, what have I? So it's the moments where I have sympathy for people who have. So like LeClaire is someone who thinks of it as like the satanic elite, whereas I don't think of things in those terms.
How do you think of them as?
Certainly sociopathic. Here I will say this: I have a tremendous amount of sympathy for the sort of Christian conspiracy theorist viewpoint, in the sense that when we talk about the evils that are done in this world, they are of an epic scale. It's to bomb a country, to rape and pillage, to commit genocide on the level that we now just take as an everyday for granted action of global policy, is evil of a biblical scale, a mythological. It's like if you were to try and quantify it, it is this Leviathan crawling across the globe. I get how serious and huge it is. I think there is a question for me of what does that mean? Is that sort of I think we're all, to say it is satanic is true in the sense of scale. it is wrong in the sense of it pushes blame off of each of us. To say it's them, it's evil, they're evil, I'm on the good team, they're on the bad team, I think is really selling short, and it's just lazy thinking of how this works. I feel like there is if anything, there's a collective sort of energetic of our fears, our brutality, our egoic desire to control and maintain things around us. You see this particularly now with the sort of coronavirus moments of like people scared and hoarding food and all this sort of stuff. These, I'm sure the same people who are hoarding food are the same people who think they're either good people, or have some of these like prepper patriot folks who are like, see, I was right all along, and I'm gonna survive this thing, and fuck those libtards who die through it or whatever. Like, when I see shit like that, I'm like, yeah, this to me right here, this is the evidence that we're just as evil, or we have that in us. We're not separate from this. The idea of I'm gonna survive, that's not a particularly Christian ideal, right? So this is where I really break from the ideology of it's a satanic elite, it's a whatever. I think we, to a certain extent, we all have these traits within us. We have these weaknesses within us, and certainly a handful of people have chosen to fully embrace that. I think Jeff Bezos, for example, he is an evil of a mythological size. But at this point, is it the man, or is it the energetic? Is it, do you know what a tulpa is? I'm sure you know what a tulpa is.
Right.
Are these things that we sort of create with our hopes and fears? We create these sort of energies and policies and things that we choose to accept as normal in the world every day. I feel like a lot more blame has to fall on our own feet for some of this stuff, and for some of these ways of thinking that the average person on the internet, or the average person in a Christian conspiracy mindset, the Christian conspiracy mindset, which I think we have to make a distinction. I do believe there is a separate, and I've been telling this for years, there is an approach to politics, conspiracies, crypto political movements and all this sort of stuff. And then there is a Christian arm of that. We saw that, with the Alex Jones and John Birch Society. And I'm very well aware of how deep that branch of this goes. And I do feel like that separate ideology, and we see this now with like the QAnon stuff. It's so quick to say, hey, the good guys love Jesus, bad guys love Satan. It's easy. I know what side I'm on. I don't have to fucking think about it anymore.
God bless us all, right? God bless us, at least. That's what.
Right. Well, exactly. God bless us. We're the ones we're on the winning team, where we know what's good and what's bad. And my argument would be, hey man, like, check yourself. You are just as nefarious as the people maybe you're not drinking baby pineal glands or something, but you're, again, if you're hoarding food, if you,
This is exactly where this needs to go as a conversation that we all have, because if we're going to go on a witch hunt, do we all remember how most witch hunts end up? It's where it's where a lot of people start pointing at each other, and sometimes some of the bad people don't get away, and most of them get away. So, it's like sometimes a few bad people get burned along in the crossfire, but it's usually not all of them. And if you end up moving into their houses and becoming those people, okay, so this is also to play, like, where does that leave the economics of Bilderberg and et cetera? Because if there is this sort of you vote with your dollar society, and the more dollars you have, the more votes you have, or if there's more to it, I guess also because there's also philanthropic organizations that people want to be a part of. If you get to be the best student governor of your community college, you're still not going to hold much sway. You're just going to be able to carry a torch, like in a lap. It's all pre-planned. So there seems to be kind of a relativity of both. Like, it doesn't sound like you're denying that there's a relationship between the people and the evil system but the thing is they've chosen it. And it's kind of, that's the real question is, how responsible are we being? I think you've made some pretty good, not judgments, but just observations about the people that are saying, that they're the sheep when they might be the goats, right? Like in the Revelation, it talks about goats building temples, and they tell the shepherd that they were worshiping in the shepherd's name, and he's like, "Leave my sight, you did not know me." And he finds these other sheep that were like feeding each other. It's like, "You guys, thanks for worshiping me." I'm like, when did we do that? It's like all day when you take care of each other. So, I mean, in this idea, also Christianity is so muted or transfigured by different generations. This idea of sacrificing the shepherd for your own immortality as a sheep, that's pretty weird. Like, that is a kind of Christianity that's pretty much, I would say, worse than the kind that people refer to as Satanism, because it seems more satanic. And it's like,
I agree, yeah.
The death instead of the life of this thing that you care about. I mean, is that
or
not
using it as using it as like I mean, you literally using your Messiah figure is the reason you worship him is because he's a scapegoat. He carries all your sins, and it's like, thank you for taking that off my back.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, get it off me. You take the blame for it. It's 1984, Do It to Julia, like when he's got the rats coming out of space and he just freaks out. He's like, just do it to someone else. And it's the person he loves. He's like, just do it to someone else, just not to me. And it's this, I think there's a lot of a driving force in the current ideology. And I want to take this, if you don't mind, I want to take two specific more examples on that.
Please do.
So throughout the Obama administration, being fully entrenched in conspiracy culture during the Obama years, I mean, we had regular coverage of like FEMA camps, all these sorts of things, right? Hey, oh my gosh, they're going to round people up. They're going to round people up. They're going to round people up. And it was this idea that this was this horrible thing that would happen. Then when we have these like immigration concerns, and granted, this is just as bad under Obama. I want to be very clear. I am not an Obama supporter in any stretch of the imagination. To say once this started happening where it really becomes a focus of like, oh, we're rounding up Mexicans, brown people, suddenly we're not so worried about it. I watched Alex Jones shift gears from him saying everything was a false flag attack. There's no such thing as Islamic terrorism, right? Where this is our own government doing it. And then there was like a magic switch flipped one day, and he's like, you got to be careful for Muslims. Look out for the Muslims. And suddenly it was this Do It to Julia moment where suddenly it was, as long as you're putting those people in the cages, I can live with it. As long as it's not me and my family in those cages. And
well, it's funny also because you have the other side of them, which were he were bringing up QAnon, which is a lot of people wanted to shy away from it. I feel like in 2016, when the Trump election happened, and by the way, I think I didn't mention enough, but I loved your recent piece on Obama and Trump and cats, and we'll have to talk about that a bit also. But this is such an interesting period where people have a kind of psyop that could be real or not, and it's becoming more and more real because more and more people are involved in it. To try to hide it for the last 2 years in the media and laugh at it has just allowed American people, but also American forces and such, to become believers in this idea. And so what is that idea? Like, if they're saying they're going to kill everybody who is a pedophile, I mean, how many soldiers have 17-year-old girlfriends? So this whole thing, what is 16 or 14 if you're in France or if you're in Canada? I mean, this system is really going to be kind of scary,
I mean, honestly, I'm terrified of the Q ideology because of how much cognitive dissonance there is. so I mean, this is going to be my other example, was to say, if you watch, particularly now that they think it's happening, they are cheering on, oh, this is essentially a false flag psyop, right? When there's no real coronavirus, they're just going to fake people out, maybe kill some people, maybe a few people die, a few million people die, no big deal. This is for the Christian crusade, it's fine.
I never met them. They don't exist, you know?
Right. But this idea that they say, hey, Trump is playing this game where he's shutting the whole fucking world down into this authoritarian slum, and in the night, these secret forces will go out and round up all the people that are responsible for everything that's bad, kill them off, dispose of them. We're fighting a holy war, so
Perhaps
everything
secretly.
goes.
They might not. First people thought it'd be on TV, and then they're like, no, what if we just did this secretly? And they all had to secretly die, you know, and they're all for it.
Right, and we'll just say that the virus killed them. And
we'll all know together what really happened.
Right.
We're already not believing us. We're used to that.
So, a few questions here. First and foremost, what kind of freedom-loving, patriot, Christian, whatever you want to call yourself, what kind of person who self-identifies as any of those things, how do they rectify supporting secret police rounding people up in the night under the guise of a false flag attack on your own people? Like, the cognitive dissonance there is so bewildering to me that it's frightening, because it's like, wow, do you have any reasoning left? Do you have, and if this idea is that, like, well, we just believe so heartily that, like, this is Jesus's, I saw some comments where this guy put up this thing saying all this, and I saw multiple people saying, like, wow, I don't know how this doesn't sound right, but if Trump's really doing this in the name of Jesus, then I guess it's okay. You know, it's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, so you can do any horrific act in the name of Jesus, and that makes it okay?
Yeah, it's called cursing. That's literally taking the Lord's name in vain. That's apparently a deal breaker, I thought.
Yeah. And what happens? Let's say you are a QAnon fan, and your wife gets sick and dies of coronavirus. Do you think, wow, she must have secretly been a Satanist, and I didn't know it, and I'm glad the good Lord took her?
Yeah. I hadn't even considered that yet, and that might be a thing.
Yeah,
they're not going to be able to deal with it when it turns out that it exists, you know?
Right. So here's a question for you. I mean, I know there are people who think the virus doesn't exist.
Seriously, yeah. I got yelled at because I talk about it like I took genetics in school. I wasn't a virologist, but I did engineer sequences that were used in promoter CAD and BioTwist science to functionally alter genes. So I'm aware of adenovirals and how they function. And I obviously have, as an engineer, a less biological look at nature. Like, I think of persons and personhood as either a legal construct or a psychological concept of pattern recognition systems, like artificial intelligence, like an artifice that has a collective awareness. I don't think of it as synthesized, and even if it is, like, it's synthesized by processes. And the omega point, that is that God that all alpha omega, you know, it's the Jesuit Teilhard Chardin kind of thing, which was silenced by the church anyway. So what is it to be? But, like, I think in general viruses are kind of like nanobots. And that there's a lot of other parasitical things that are happening. Like, most of the people that are suffering, they're saying they have pre-existing conditions. Namely, they have other things that are going haywire because of this autoimmune dysfunction. So even there, it suggests that what people who are living with all of these parasites and with different kinds of things in their fauna and gut fauna, they're unable. Those things are going haywire right now. But people want to say, oh, well, you just need to eat turmeric and get away from cell towers. And I don't think that that's enough. It's like,
yeah, particularly if this is, I mean, you know, the possibility exists for this being some sort of weaponized virus that, you know, whether that was intentionally released or not, if it was just something that escaped from a lab, or even if it's just even if it's just a naturally occurring, oh shit, this is how nature works. You know, I grew up, when I was living in New York during the West Nile you remember the West Nile freak out?
Right.
And that literally what they considered ground zero for West Nile was about 3 blocks from my apartment in New York.
Totally. Wow, I hadn't
And
thought of that. It's crazy.
and when that happened, what they did, so they said, oh, it's all these mosquitoes. So there was this sort of like this
Airborne.
piece of property that was like kind of like a marshy wasteland. It's like people would like dump stolen cars, and stuff like that, right? So it's this kind of like swampy area is what the official story of West Nile starting in the U.S. is from this. We used to call the lots as kids. We just say that's the lots, is where you dump shit. And so what they did, they said, oh, it's the mosquitoes are infecting people. So they started doing this thing where for the next months, years, they were spraying these really high-powered pesticides throughout the town. So at first, when this first happens, they would do this thing where they like go drive around with megaphones on cars. Everyone close your windows, and they would spray these heavy pesticides throughout the town. And then they started doing it through the air, and planes would be flying over spraying shit and all this sort of stuff. And so
And
you know
this
what
is
happened?
what Alex Jones said to turn the friggin' frogs gay, right? That.
Well, I don't know if it turned the frogs gay, but I could tell you one thing that, well, actually, I don't. I could tell you that it didn't turn the frogs gay, because I think frogs are pretty naturally gay.
Yeah, a lot of them.
But
Frog curious.
yeah. But one thing I can tell you that came out of that was that for the next few years, the mosquitoes, like you could literally see they looked different. I remember the first summer after they had basically stopped spraying, or they'd slowed down their spraying, being outside in my mom's backyard, and we used to like, okay, maybe you hang out back there for a little bit. My brother and I were out there for 20 minutes, and we are covered in these mosquito bites that swelled up like the size of like golf balls. The mosquitoes looked so weird, and I grew up in this is literally the house where I grew up. I was visiting. I know what the mosquitoes look like there. I know what my body's reaction to mosquito bites is, all this sort of stuff. And it was like that until like basically I stopped going over there. It was like, hey, this is so bad. The mosquitoes are so out of control. They've mutated. And basically what did you do is you now only the strongest, most infectious mosquitoes left that survived all your heavy spraying. You just made them stronger by breeding out all the weaker mosquitoes. You have played an unconscious, let's even say this is unintentional, this is literally like the hubris of science.
Conscious but unintentional. Yeah, you're totally different. Your intentions, the road to hell, slickly paved with good intentions.
It doesn't have to be the New World Order was spraying my mom's neighborhood to kill my mom. It's literally, oh, they were trying to get rid of the fucking West Nile mosquitoes, and instead they made mutated super mosquitoes that were like, my niece got so sick from these mosquito bites and all this sort of stuff. And I haven't been back there. I don't know what the situation is now, but just to say, like, that was again experiential awareness of, you can't tell me these were the same mosquitoes from the summer before. I can tell you very succinctly they were not. Again, because I grew up there.
But what year is this again?
Oh gosh. I'm going to say probably that's around 2009, maybe.
Okay, yeah. So like after the Codex Alimentarius in Europe and America and Canada start producing books that say these are the specific chemicals that can be used, because our engineers and our scientists and doctors and pharmaceutical companies have said these are the safe pesticides made by oil companies. And then, you have these hormones that they're using. This happened in California too. They had the apple moth spray. David Plate, a good friend of ours, has talked about this. We went to try to stop it, essentially, because they're like, hey, this is messed up. You're just going to go spray this without asking anybody. It's going to destroy all the organic certifications for all the farmers. It's going to, who knows what the effects are of spraying. It was to feminize them. So it was like an estrogenic spray to feminize the apple moths. And, not that Santa Cruz wasn't already weird enough. So people were like, what's going on with like spraying chemicals over everybody and putting it in our water? And, Same thing with strawberries. You know, you see the strawberry fields in California. There'll be Mexicans in, like, you know, ET, where they're wearing the white bodysuits. They wear these, you know, I guess now, you know, people when they walk down the street, if they have a permission slip, like they're in these like white suits, hazmat suits. They can't get the strawberry spray on them. So I don't know. I mean, those chemicals are pretty interesting. Again, though, what's funny about that, I'm sure you've, you know, maybe not. Have you thought about the West Nile connection to Hecate? Because Hecate and Hecate are all about the flooding of the Nile and the plagues, because the frog comes after the mosquitoes and the different pests. So it's kind of kind of another
Right,
good
yeah.
thing.
Who's chasing those bugs? Frogs, maybe locusts.
Yeah, Lucas.
You know, there's an interesting thing here is the frog angle.
Totally. Keck is such a weird thing that like led to, I mean, but you gotta, come on. Before Christianity, this was associated with Egyptian chaos magic. How weird is that? Like, you had white supremacists with black gods for a minute there. Like, what? Come on. That's cool. That's weird.
It's weird, that's for sure. I don't know if it's cool. Yeah,
Well,
okay,
I mean,
okay.
bring them all together. That part of it is
Yeah, yeah.
interesting. Like
No, I
the
got
part,
you. I get you.
the anti-Babylon part, where all of a sudden things were getting so close to themselves that every Uncle Dave of George Carlin was pouring through that crack in the Matrix. I mean, that's kind of interesting that we got a chaos magic thing. I mean, what's up with the frog, right? And there's a frog card in the Illuminati card game. Like, what's up with the frog?
So yeah, I mean, I think that's the part that worries me, particularly in the last few years, is I think it is an incredibly potent chaos magic element. And, you know, chaos magic in and of itself has this sort of, I don't know, I guess this idea around it, a popular idea of like, oh, whatever, you know, like this
Mystique
is,
romance, yes.
but also, and like when people think a lot of my experience is that a lot of people look at chaos magic as, oh, I don't have to put that much thought into it because it's chaotic. So, you know, like your intentionality is less defined. You've dropped your borders, your rituals, your structure that made sure your intention was focused. And you're like, it's chaotic, so I could do whatever the fuck I want. And I think that, you know,
Or
particularly
you
during,
can't. You can do what you do stuff you do without will, and so what ends up happening again, it's not your intention. Like you're
precise,
even in your
yeah.
full awareness, you're making other things happen.
That, yes. Okay, that's a very good way to say it, because like my thing is saying, "Oh, I can do whatever I want," is the person thinking I can be lazy, not very well versed in magic, and do a half-assed ritual, and it's just funny on the internet, or I do this meme magic, and isn't it funny? Hillary Clinton is getting upset about it, so of course it's funny, and I'm going to keep doing it. And these sorts of snowball effect of, again, what's so funny to me is like to see, you know, I don't want to lump everyone into one category or another, but the idea of like when I see people like they are the Christians who are doing the good thing, but they're
Right, there's a
also,
broadness of different like sections to this amphitheater, but
mm,
it's definitely a thing where it's like they're kind of lumping together, and some you're seeing it if you're one of them, so you're gonna choose, like, if you see the Ebola meme, right? Because that's also before this, before Corona Chan, which where they're sending around memes to people in Africa and America that say I love you, Corona Chan, goddess of Corona, on the pale horse of the four horsemen, like, say I love you or else, you know. And that was what they did with Ebola Chan. And this is something I did in an episode a little bit recently. I looked into Ebola, who's the goddess, or I'm sorry, the demon of pestilence and plagues and of certain kinds of diseases. And so Ebola and Ebola to Corona, like the Corona Chan is very
mm-hmm.
clearly like the next incarnation of it for them, for the chaos magicians. But you know, this also plays on the other side, right? Like, remember a couple of years ago, the Secret Sun group was, you know, shut down essentially because members were not getting the intentional they weren't reaching the destination they wanted to with their intentions, and they were realizing they didn't have control over the magic that was using them. And before that, you're right, and continued after that with others. Many of the chaos magicians just became only discordic, Or it's like, hey, isn't it cool that I was used by this big experience of the universe where a bunch of people got Hillary Clinton to faint, which is like, I mean, it's powerful, isn't it? Like, be impressed. But like at the end of the day, like what is the power for? Is that to do something good? And again,
Precisely. I put a lot of value on intentionality, and this brings us back to our earlier point, which is, as I was saying, like if you're a Christian but you're okay using like weird, ancient Egyptian magic to smite the enemies of your current political party or something. I don't know what the fuck you think you're
LOL.
doing.
But yeah, sounds
Right.
about
Or
right.
is it you're like this hipster on the internet who just thinks it's funny and gets a this is just for the laughs or something. Um, to me, that's what scared me a few years ago, and is that like there was this vogue and it was funny and people weren't taking it seriously, but I knew very well that this had real magical ramifications. And if we want to take a quick thing here, is to say I've been thinking a lot about the frog lately, for a number of reasons. One is that in 2011, you mentioned this video I just released, and maybe we can go into that a little bit. But
Yes.
I just want to sort of front load the story with this. I focused intently on the symbolism of this king, and so like the lion symbolism, particularly cat symbolism, and the king, and how all these things were associated. And in 2011, I have this on my old blog. I kept making note at that time in 2011 of like, hey, I don't know why, but every time I write about I find something that has to do with this king, this cat king, lion king, solar king, all this sort of stuff. There's always associated with this frog imagery. And in 2011, writing in 2011, like, I'm not sure why the frog keeps coming up with this, but I'm going to keep kind of like just putting it in the notes, put it in the margin. Don't forget, there's something weird about this frog element, frog element, frog element.
Sort of a frog prince going
on. One thing, and this is, for your demonic research here, there were certain depictions of Baal, who I think is, horribly perverted propaganda bit under normal circumstances.
Think about Hannibal, the great soldier, son of Baal. Like it's not necessarily.
Yeah.
It's like hell. It's like Hellenism, similarly turned around.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate what happened to that, I don't know, archetype or mythological figure. But that being said, there are so there's like demonic encyclopedias. You can find depictions of Baal as a spider with 3 heads, and one head is a human man with a crown. He's the king. Another head is a cat, and another head is a frog. It's a really common depiction of this demonic entity, frog, cat, king. And I'm like, oh shit, that's really interesting how that is like, this is the symbolism I keep coming up with around this. So
it's really the same frog also, which is such a trip. Like, because usually you have like a smiling king or maybe like a stoic king. He's got the same frown as the "you feel me, bro." In 4chan, you think of fortune telling. 4chan is the sort of
I like
military.
That,
yeah. Yo, sure. And it's out of YOLO. A lot of the kids are like Vietnamese American intelligence from UC Davis that kind of are. They're the Californian Asian population that go to college that I have met who have been involved with this give the impression of there being a very well organized and conservative and military oriented and patriotic to a fault almost group. So that also gives you kind of an impression of what kind of people built this while they were in college. But however, they have the "you feel me, bro." So in college you go and you'll see pictures of this white faced guy who looks solemn, very much like the king, but without his crown. And then the frog never smiles. Like you always see the Pepe, the frog, his face is an extreme kind of frown, like sad kind of frown. And it's literally the same wide-eyed frown and frog on the picture of Val. It's completely uncanny, and it's weird. Also, I had that realization a couple months ago, and I was like, oh, what's going on?
This was something in 2011. What was happening was, and I don't know if you want to go into any specifics of the video here, but you have in 2011 there was this moment where Donald Trump and Barack Obama face off. So you literally have on April 20. So here's something I don't give it as specific. I didn't take the time to go as specific in the video. You might be interested in this. I believe it's April 28th is that they dig the dead Pope up out of the ground. Okay. It was either the 28th or the 29th. On the 29th, the British royal wedding happens. This is Will and Kate. And then April 30th, Barack Obama does this thing where he's challenging his whole Donald Trump. He's making fun of Donald Trump for the whole birth certificate issue. And he says, basically, he announces himself as the Lion King. He shows this video of himself as the Lion King. The next day, May 1st, he says, hey, I've killed Osama bin Laden. Osama means lion in Arabic, and it means king in Japanese. So literally, the day after saying, I am the Lion King, he announces that he has killed the Lion King. The next day, they have a ceremony for the Pope, where the reason they dug him up out of the ground is that they have this whole ceremony where they make him a saint. Pope John Paul II is elevated to sainthood. And then the next day, they put the Pope back in the ground. So it's almost as if the Pope is lifted up out of the ground to be present for the whole weekend of events. I didn't put that note into the video, but I think that's a really fascinating element. Is they literally they made sure he was up out of the ground for the whole sequence of events.
That's really one of the craziest videos I've seen in a while. I think people need to check out. And I'm gonna actually, I should put this at the beginning. I'm gonna say this and add it at the beginning. But Sync Book Press is one of my favorite things. Of course, the kitchen sink and everything are the research being done is definitely it's unique and it's effective in pointing out things. And so the Hindsight 2020 video, episode 3, Coronation of the King. I think that's one of the most interesting videos that's out right now, and I recommend a lot of people check it out for so many reasons. And granted, even though you mentioned some of the most interesting synchronicities, there's a lot more going on with that. I mean, even just to a fault of Occam's razor, thinking about the most simple thing. That is what the media at least wants people to think is why President Trump is president, right? Because he's donating his money. He doesn't want the money. He gave his salary again, this time to coronavirus research and taking care of people. Every time he's made this point that he's annoyed that he, was put in the same sentence of yesterday I beat Trump and today I killed Osama, says Obama. And that is supposed to be, at least, the reason why he's built this or been drafted to be a part of this rise of, this military police state for a moment, or however long. I think that's another thing, is a lot of people think that it's not going to last forever. But what good puritanical society does, really. I mean,
sure, yeah. So I just, if I understand you correctly, you're saying he has spoken out to say that he doesn't want to be associated with that weekend?
Oh, wait, sorry. Whom?
Were you saying Donald Trump has denied, it says that he doesn't want to be associated with that weekend?
Oh, no. I don't think so at all. I'm saying I think in general that is the media presentation of the interaction. I mean, it's very clear, and it's interesting how the numbers sync up with saint holidays also, because he went to a Jesuit school for his academy, and there's a lot of little pieces to this king story, and it's, when you think about it, it's also on a ethical level really important, because again, you said you're not supporting Obama by saying, the Obama Agenda 21 was what it was. There was an 8 a minute delay maybe between each bomb for the entire 8 years he was president. I have a drone president. There's a lot of drones killing a lot of people for 8 years, and baseball cards like the Illuminati cards, which had stats on people and would blow up their houses. This is why the Osama situation is so interesting, because he was murdering so many people and invading so much privacy, and that's not the problem presented. The problem presented was this sort of, is he from here thing, which is like, it's such a, I mean, I'm not saying that there's not constitutional chess move value to it, but there is psychological value to, do you want to divide people? And they made it this idea that like Trump is very racist, which is like not the way Trump was ever presented before. Trump was always presented as he won this award with Rosa Parks and stood there next to Muhammad Ali. And would Muhammad Ali stand next to anybody who wasn't a decent human being? So you have to give him credit.
I don't know. Muhammad Ali, I thought was in pretty bad mental shape towards the end.
Well, that's the thing. So then all of a sudden the augmentation happens. This is exactly what Ellen DeGeneres did with George Bush, because she's dating or something the daughter of Dick Cheney and the end of George Bush, one of them. So they ended up having friendships and they paint together. And so she had him on the couch, and the applause button rang, and the American people who used to hate him decided, whoa, we love this guy.
I know. I've had that argument. I think it's disgusting how Ellen DeGeneres had normalized George Bush, and it's like, oh, why can't I have friends on all sides of the political spectrum? It's like, no, you don't get to be friends with a fucking war criminal. Sorry.
Yeah, war crime is a specific kind of thing, and also when it's a continuation, like the way things are going on with Nestle and the Bush family in Paraguay right now is kind of, I mean, at least disgusting. It's terrifying also, because it'd be nice if there was a little water left at the end of all this. But yeah.
But I don't, to your point, I mean, the question of, is Trump actually racist, or is he utilizing racism to advance his, popularity? It kind of speaks to the question of, so coronavirus, is this a virus that escaped from a lab, or is it a naturally occurring virus? It's almost like, well, at the end of the day, the ramifications are the same. I'll still have to deal with whether they accidentally let it out or it got out on its own. We're having to clean up the mess of the situation. I think with Donald Trump, he has intentionally weaponized the racism of other people, potential supporters. And my point with the situation around the birth certificate, the fact that he focused on that, the fact that so many people to this day, I have, some guy commented on my video here that we're talking about, saying to this day, being like, well, you should be upset if your president's not born in the United States, because that's against the Constitution. It's like, yeah, but he had a laundry list of things that were against the Constitution. We literally were trying. So I remember during George Bush's presidency, there was a movement to try and get George Bush impeached for these war crimes, for invading countries without congressional approval, for all, spying on people, moving money around, all the things that you could say, hey, this is literally what we're complaining about George Bush for. If you really wanted to play some 5D chess and you wanted to get rid of Obama, the thing you would have said was, hey, Obama is bombing these countries without congressional approval. We've invaded, this is literally breaking the Constitution. Oh, he's spying on American citizens. This is breaking the Constitution. You had a laundry list of things you could have said, this is illegal, and this is what I want to go after you for. And I argue would have been so effective, because could a Democrat, your Democrat class, how would they defend against that? If they were literally making a point for 8 years about what a shitbag George Bush was, that's the point at which you say, all right, I'm going to play your game against you. Hey, we don't like that you're invading these countries. We don't like that you're spying on American citizens. And the Democrats really wouldn't be able to say much. And I think you would have had so much more of a weight behind it. It would have shown that you actually were a man of principle or a woman of
Well,
principle.
there is a side to it, which is okay. So I used to work for CNN, and like the way things work is like you attack someone out of surprise, and when they have a good answer, you change the subject. Like in the media, there's no way that it was going to be presented. The information, like the Snowdenian information, was not like it wasn't on the public's plate. And when it became public, then there wasn't the intention of them to turn it off. Like they wanted to keep using it for themselves. Some of the worst things that happened in Spygate, after Watergate, were all the way back to during the Pentagon Papers, with, well, of course, George Herbert Walker Bush, Magog, but also with Carter, because during Carter, so much of the, like Grant in the Civil War, so much of the governance was done in the agencies that he kind of didn't stop or really, hinder or understand the amount of surveillance that was going on of the American people. But pretty much every phone call since 1958 has been recorded. And they've had amazing capacity to decrypt messages all the way to that point. Google's been releasing technology that they look at it like a white page that they can use as a search engine, but really Google is like the biggest disclosure of military technology that we've ever seen, because it's all of it, to an extent, for those that are licensed. There are people that can't get access to all of it, but everything from DNA to robotics to pattern recognition. What is a cat? What is not a cat? What do cats have in common that humans haven't noticed? Like these kinds of things, they're starting to augment the way that we look at things. And so this media blitz, if we're supposed to focus on anything rational, that's not going to work. That's what Trump's whole campaign has been, is this, you focus on something, people say you're a liar, and then they look it up and they find out, well, there's some truth in between the lies to what he's saying. Like he said, Sweden had this terrorist attack recently, a couple of years ago. And what terrorist attack? There was no news of a terrorist attack. And then like, well, do you mean this one or that one? And there's like 1,000 little tiny things that happened that were all adding up. And so in a way, it's a presentation that the people can turn into a truth, right, for themselves. And they're like, oh, well, the media is lying to me. But at the same time, now I see that, like, between the lies. And I think that's a big part of what people like, is they like to feel clever. And with the Democrats, they're having a huge problem because they're focusing on this idea of, and they have been for a long time, pets. They like to have pet causes, and they need pets for their pet causes. And if people don't want to be pets, like, they've really lost the African American population. Like, there's so many more Trump supporters for African Americans than there already were. And up until FDR, most blacks continued to be supportive of the Republican Party because of the secession of Abraham Lincoln, in the Emancipation Proclamation. But then,
right, it used to be called the Party of Lincoln, yeah.
Yeah, the Party of Lincoln, which is funny because before that it was called the Anti-Mason Party, and then it was disillusioned into, the Republican Party. But, what is it at the end of the day? Is it, do you believe in a democracy? Do you really want to live in a prison where everyone gets to vote whether they rape you? And then they can make people who are guards enforce that by holding you down. I mean, a real democracy isn't like what anyone should want. And a real republic, that has no contribution by the people, that's pretty bad too. Like, if it can just be that you're told what to do all the time and there's no balance to that, there's a problem. So I mean, this idea of vying back and forth, while the same two people that are fighting on stage end up going on the weekend to the Skull and Bones one evening and then to a family barbecue the next. That's kind of the other aspect of it, where it's not a conspiracy, it's a relationship. And there's relationships between people, and they live in the system. They live in Connecticut. They live in a comfortable circumstance away from everyone else. I was living in Connecticut recently, and we're about 10 miles from Yale. I got out a few days before the coronavirus really hit. Actually, I got out the day that it was being announced that it was coming. And then New York City went black. I just got word 2 days ago that where I was at was party zero. There's like an article in the New York Times talking about this Connecticut soiree that happened right down the street from where I was at. But no people that were at it, 50 people. And I didn't see them after this. So luckily I'm completely out of it. Like, I was isolated, but this was where the biggest spread of the coronavirus happened. All these people going every direction, rich people, people from South Africa, people that were flying in for this event, and it was the biggest spread because they're all affluent and they're able to travel, and so it's just this huge 12 monkeys kind of circumstance where people are like spreading everything without any sort of concern. Okay, well, this has gone far out. I've gone full Kincaid on this. Do you want to talk about some spoilers from Cats that you saw that you don't think too many other people would notice even after the first watch?
Well, hold on. I think if you don't mind, I would like to
You can
just
go.
back.
You can, dude. Please. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because I'm trying to understand. I thought I have seen the story about the Connecticut Party. I think that's really interesting that you are very close to that, or know people from that. That's really interesting. I just want to sort of backtrack to this idea of like Democrat and Republican parties. I don't want to get spiraled into like any kind of partisan politics because so to make myself clear to you and your listeners is that I despise both political parties. I think that the Democratic Party clearly showed its evil in the last few years of how it's controlling its terrible candidates.
Joe Biden, Creepy Joe is pretty scary. Yeah, what's going on with Joe Biden? But Groucho Marx said, I would never accept membership of a club that would have someone like me as a member. I stand by that as well. I feel exactly like you do on that one.
Sure. So to a certain extent, there's a real frustration that I get. I think it's from that perspective that like this. I guess where I want to backtrack is I feel like I'm sensing there's still some softness or forgiveness for Trump's actions coming from your end, and
I'm very skeptical of Trump. I will say that also. I wouldn't say that I believe that QAnon is going to save us. I think that a lot of people say that on
I would hope. Yeah, I would hope.
A lot of people are pretty convinced of that, and I think that that's a lot of hope to put on a horse.
I would hope that the QAnon thing is pretty transparent for some of the reasons I mentioned earlier, and for a laundry list of other reasons. I mentioned to a friend of mine, Zenor, he's a great researcher. We had a conversation recently. We were like, do you remember a guy named Benjamin Fulford? He kept saying that like these like ninjas or yakuza was going to take down the Rockefeller family and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah,
every week he would promise that like, it's
some promises coming from
right. So
any day now.
Yeah, any day now. It's the same. It's like a fucking predicting an apocalypse or predicting a utopia or anything. It's the classic promises of a politician.
Well, I have a weird relation to that one, actually, to be fair. Okay, this is terrible, but don't take this the wrong way because I agree with you. But at the same time, because you said that, so I used to work for this nanotechnology companies in graphene for Amazon water cleanup and biomimesis down in Peru, in the Peruvian state. I was working for the Peruvian state, and if you know the president of Peru, he last term was 2 terms ago, I guess, was Fujimori. And so Fujimori was, if you can't tell, it's not a very Peruvian name, it's a Japanese name. There's a lot of Japanese people in Peru and in the Amazon. The Yakuza control, turns out, most of the fishing industry in South America, along with a lot of the land for growing food for their very highly stacked, very smallly populated country. So they make a lot of food in the Peruvians and the Perus, and they send it back. And there's graffiti everywhere. I was living in the Amazon where you had to fly into an island in between the river, between the fork in the river, the Triton of Hecate. I'm just kidding, but basically. And you get to this spot where the graffiti says "No mas Fujimori." So at least it's a big enough deal there that people are getting shot by the Yakuza and having rocks left on their chest with notes that are saying "Get out of town" or "Stop doing this" or "Leave the river system," because we're using it for our thing. So there is a lot of corporate espionage with the Yakuza. And, at the end of the day, the Rockefellers have changed the Rothschilds have changed. I know from living in New York now, this is funny. I made a video that had like, oh, the people that control the world at one point, like years ago. And it had, I didn't say anything bad about anybody, but I had a picture of Nathaniel Rothschild, who I then met. He's like long hair and he's a nice guy and he's trying to work on making the world a better place because he doesn't know what the hell else to do with his time. And it was a really interesting perspective of like, okay, let's say you become Fidel Castro. What the hell do you do? Like, what do you do? Well, like, how do you not become the new world order? How do you become the last good thing on earth or whatever? Like, so all these people that we used to think of as like, they're all trying to get babies in the night. There's a lot of people that are trying really hard to do what's right, and they don't know all the time what the consequences are, or they're, maybe they're lacking humility or something, but they're still trying to do the right thing. They're doing their best. And it really changes the perspective when you see like, okay, well, Hillary Clinton's not actually trying to kill you. Maybe she's killing babies and prying their faces open, like 4chan says, but probably she's just like a lot of ladies that is trying to make the world a better place and doesn't succeed, And
well, she's trying to make. I mean, she's a particular cunt. Like she's trying to make the world better for her and her rich friends, and
her perspective broken.
Yeah, she doesn't care who dies. That's just it. Like seeing the vitriol thrown at Hillary Clinton by the Trump's side of things. Again, I support you. Of like, yeah, she is terrible. She is horrible person. I wouldn't even go as nice as you were to say like maybe she's well intentioned. I don't believe she's well intentioned. I bet you she thinks she is. I'm sure she thinks she's a great person. But she's selfish and doesn't mind killing people around the globe. Not even some like killing people that know her secrets. Yeah, just to say, like, even from bombing countries, supporting war campaigns that are like madness. This is colonialism on steroids. These are the things I think we should be pretty upset about. Things that we can prove. Is she drinking baby blood? In the middle of the night? Man.
So does she need to be?
Right. That's just it. Like, I don't understand why the conspiracy has to go there.
Why is that? Why are the limbo bars so high right now?
Why? Right. What about, hey, you supported this invasion of this country. Hey, you've supported these sanctions on these people that have killed this many children.
Plenty of babies died.
How many babies died because of your political maneuverings? That, to me, I guess what I was saying before, that is evil. Like, if we want to call that satanic, I'm like, that's where I have sympathy of like, yeah, this is really fucking evil. But I don't see that Trump or any of these Q people or just like literally any, like, give me an alternative of someone else. I don't see their actions being any different. I cannot tell the difference between Trump and Obama and Hillary Clinton and all these people. I don't see what other people see of like, oh, I think this person's well-intentioned.
There's a lot of people that you have to imagine you're a cop. Mm-hmm. Imagine for a second you're in like a city that is a liberal city, like Oakland or something like that. There's a lot of people on drugs. You're not from there. You got moved there for your job. And there are people that are a different color somehow, slightly. I don't know. They're black or they're Mexican or you're Mexican and they're white. Who cares? But there's somehow they look slightly different to you. And, like you're okay with it at first, but then you start being brought in by the cops because you're too okay with things to bad circumstances where you get your like a shepherd will break a stray sheep's leg so that they will stay close to the shepherd for the rest of their life. They'll take a cop and they'll put them in harm's way so that they learn. They're like, well, you think pot's okay? Let's take him to a PCP case, and like have him, get his arm broken or something. And after that, he'll heal, but then he'll be more close to the core. And so then you're scared because you're living in this circumstance where there's more and more liberalism. And so all of a sudden, There's heroin and shit maps on Google for San Francisco, and like I don't know the last time you've been to San Francisco, but it's crazy. Like it was up to a week ago when the cops were told they get to ticket anyone who's outside, and now I'm sure they're having a field day because they're like, oh, thank God, now I can stop heroin addicts because we had to decriminalize it and let people just sit there on potholes doing this and then breaking into cars. And this is like Harlem in the 80s, in the late 70s. So there's a certain kind of appeal to a certain kind of person who's at wit's end. I think that's a big part of what Trump's campaign was there's so much of a push that we have to submit to someone else, And so many people were like, yeah, like I'm tired of it. Like I don't want to deal with, this party that
So
doesn't
you
even
think like you think some white MAGA hat wearing guy in
not just
Alabama, huh?
not just though. Think about also
I'm saying, do you think you're describing is a psyop to pit the peasants against each other? You're not.
absolutely.
Yeah. So just to be clear, like I understand how that psychology works, which is the billionaire. This is the thing. We're told to complain about the Mexican or the Indian guy who stole your job rather than this billionaire who's funneling all the money into his pockets.
Yeah, I'd even go further and say like so racism is like passe to a fault that socioeconomic prejudice is the new vogue. And so it doesn't even really matter what color you are. If you are on your upward mobility, it becomes a threat to people that have noticed there's a limit to the amount of people that are allowed to be in servitude and been given golden chains. So it doesn't even matter what color you are. You could be fighting against people that are the same color. That happened for a long time without other races. But it's so much easier to dehumanize people. Although I think at this point people are dehumanizing each other no matter what. They don't even care.
Sure, yeah. I mean, so this is where like, if we talk about a heroin problem, I'm more upset that like once George Bush invaded Afghanistan, the U.S. military was responsible for taking over the opium supply routes and increased opium production by 400% upon invading. That is a cause to complain about a heroin addiction. I'm not so worried about the poor black guy who's taking heroin in San Francisco, this hypothetical person that is, that's bringing down our property values or stealing our job or making a public nuisance. How about we get to the root of the problem, which is why the fuck are we importing? Why is our government secretly smuggling all this heroin, all this opium out of Afghanistan for over a decade?
There's not a day that goes by where we don't hear, well, I guess I or you probably see it more often than others, that a plane's been intercepted now that's from the government and from one agency or another. It's been filled with cocaine or heroin, and that's just the kind that goes to one of the senators. That's not one of their own. They have a lot of their own private planes too. So yeah, I mean the amount of drug control, and it seems like it's become more of an issue in the last couple of years, right? No one seemed to care during the Bush years about the heroin problem nearly as much until the Chinese invented synthetic. Well, we started allowing the Chinese to produce for us made in China versions of lab-based super fentanyl, super heroines. And now it's become a problem because we can't control the industry. And by we, I mean they. But it's that now all of a sudden they're like, oh, we should stop this. We don't want people to do this anymore because we're not making money off of it. Or maybe there's more to it, but it seems like controlling people and keeping them. I mean, Washington, D.C., right, is one of the biggest PCP places in the country. There's very few places that can get synthesized drugs, and it's not probably these black kids in their project houses that are producing it. I think
that's my point. Yeah. Again, it goes back to the idea of the scapegoat, and I feel like, for Trump and the people around him to utilize common scapegoats like Mexican drug cartels, which are real. Those are real things. But again, if we want to talk like a numbers game, if Trump really wanted to do something, he could and he was this master controller of this secret government military force, maybe he could stop smuggling heroin into the country utilizing government planes. Maybe that would be a place to start rather than worrying about building like a wall on the border of Mexico. That's just me. I feel like that would be something that you not only have control over, but something you probably have more responsibility from the idea of like what's happening in my own house. It's one thing from like, wow, look at that neighbor doing blah blah blah. If like literally that shit is happening in my house, maybe I should clean up my shit, and then I can talk about putting up a fence for the neighbor.
Hugely. It makes you also wonder a bit about so if this is one, right? So this is the other side of it, because this is the question I wanted to ask even in the kitchen sink and Secret Sun, right about 2016, it was what was going to happen if this went down. And it seems like everything I kind of worried or hoped at the same time. I mean, we do have good things. Like, let's be honest, like the resignation of 12,000 CEOs who are, by all accounts, whether they eat babies or not, evil people. Like that seems pretty impressive. But at the same time, everything else that comes with it, right? You have this Pied Piper idea that there are rats and that the children are, the parents want the rats gone. The children come with the Pied Piper. He gets rid of the rats playing his tune, and then he says, pay me. When they don't pay the Pied Piper, he opens up the wall and he swallows the children behind the wall, and the wall closes behind him, and the parents and the children are separated. And I keep getting that vision. I've had that vision since very early on. Silicon Valley, which has been kind of a show that had some syncs to it, showing the blood boys. And I knew a lot of people that were selling their blood for blood plasma just to afford Stanford and things. There was a lot of disclosures, I would say, in that show. And one of the things was the song in the company is I'm the Pied Piper, follow me. There's this kind of scare I have where they're saying what we're protecting for you is your children. This pedophile cult is after your children. And then you're going to have to pay the Pied Piper. And if you don't, what are they going to do with this COVID-19 outbreak? They could probably take all the kids, bring them to school, and say, we don't want them to be close to the parents anymore, and not bring them back. I mean, like, crazier things have happened. And they've happened to people in the United States now. Whether or not they're citizens, like it's shown that it's a system that works. If we start importing other people's militaries to replace our police, our local police, then it's very easy to imagine how people could enforce that on someone else. And that's probably what we'll do if we want. We'll shift them around, the militaries, and just enforce this. So I mean, that's the scare everyone had like a decade ago when we had Obama in presidency. Why are we not so concerned now? Why do we have so much trust? And I'm looking for things that we could really trust in. Obviously, your Hecate thing is cool because I like that it's Hecate. That's pretty big to me. But at the same time, there's more. There's also like, what is Trump really promising that the world will look like afterwards? And if the promise is just what it won't have, then I'm not as excited about what the promise should be, which is what it should have in it. And it should have a lot more hope than just that we've gotten rid of a few people that pretty much most of us have been pretty smart about keeping our kids from pedophiles. The few that haven't, I'm glad that we've brought awareness to it. But we need to be also thinking about, where are we going, where we're going to start hunting ourselves down. If there's like, this is the point now where they're saying, okay, if they're saying that these people have hunting parties and they take children and they hunt them down on horseback, what is it that we're trying to do to them? We're trying to do the same thing to them, right? So it's kind of like the story of in Moby Dick where they crash the boat and the captain and his nephew, they choose to go with the crew on the lifeboat to the wrong island, which has no life on it, and everyone's starving. And so they pull straws to eat somebody, and then they end up, the reason they did this going to the wrong island was because they knew there was food. They went south to the more Polynesian region, but that they thought that the natives were cannibals. The natives were eating monkeys, and they thought, and only during special holidays. but they thought that they were cannibals because they'd seen that or heard rumors of it on ships. So what did they end up doing out of their fears? They're eating the nephew of the captain. They became cannibals. So I think this is the biggest, you become your fears kind of situation where we're about to become all the things, if we're not careful, that we're saying are so desperately evil,
Okay, so that's where you and I totally see eye to eye and the thing feel like I've been screaming into the void for the last few years is that whatever psychological, sociological, even philosophical, spiritual reasons that some folks have for aligning themselves, whether that's folks aligning themselves with Trump and Republicans or aligning themselves with Pelosi and Democrats or whatever the fuck, whatever side you want to take. I feel like it's the same side. It's like there is so little distinction. It's like, do you want this guy to run your mafia or do you want that guy? We've never been given an alternative of what if we didn't have that. And this idea of like, well, Trump is this outsider. I mean, he's a mobster just like anyone else. I just don't see why people have this cognitive dissonance around those actions. Like the action, it's the same thing. The scary thing for me is I went through the Obama presidency, particularly living in New York. It's considered a fairly liberal city. You couldn't criticize Obama for those years because I'm like, oh, what are you talking about? He's great. And you just couldn't get through to people. And now I've spent the last, 3-4 years where it's like trying to talk to people and they're like, what do you mean? Trump's great. And I'm like, wow, I feel like we're having, I just thought it would be different. I thought people, after having this conversation so much about like, can't you see what horrible things being done? Somehow we can't see eye to eye there. But what we can see eye to eye right here is you and I are on the same page of, hey man, let's at least look at what are the consequences or the dangers of becoming the thing we don't like. So you see that with take a liberal person who says they're all for like they're anti-fascist, but then they want to control language and things like that. So we see how clearly that's being done on the left of like becoming the thing they say they hate. I think it's a little harder for people on the right, particularly because they have a lot of them have a religious sort of justification in mind. It's a lot harder, I think, for some of them to see that they're in the same position by supporting authoritarianism in the guise of quote unquote doing good is the same thing as the liberal guy shutting down speech quote unquote for the name of good or whatever, how many laundry list of examples we can give. The ideology, the temptation to become the thing that you're fighting against is so real and so pervasive no matter what side of the spectrum you're on. And I've been begging people and pleading with people to kind of consider how that is the case in their actions more often than not without you realizing it. And if you tried to replace, if you literally like, fucking put a picture of Obama over put a picture of Obama over
Nice.
Donald Trump's head while he's talking. Yeah, nice Jungian slip, right?
Right,
Put a picture of Obama over Trump's face while he's talking and see how you feel different. Do you suddenly like the words coming out of his mouth? Do you fucking hate the words coming out of his mouth? How do we feel that if we just strip away the persona and just look at like what are the policies? If you're proposing to shut down the country or to imprison these people or to bomb this country or take over this industry or bail out these billionaires, I just don't fucking see a difference. I just don't see a difference in any policy. And yet we're somehow so divided. We're polarized over what? Over this, literally arguing over who gets to be fucking more evil.
And where is it justified? It's so true. And it's funny also, okay, so one of the other sides of this, in terms of like QAnon presenting itself as non-racist, like they do really push this, like, they say anytime people are racist, like, we're not racist, anybody's just racist, don't be a part of the thing. And you've got a lot of African-American support, like I said, like you've got Candace Owens and all of the Blexit movement. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the Democratic Party has dismantled itself in such a way that there's not a lot of hope there for a lot of people. So they see this as like, well, whatever it is, maybe, we're already used to trauma, so we can put up with this even more. And I know this doesn't sound like the perfect lead in, but think about the Jellicles. I mean, seriously, like Heaviside, why are the Jellicles trying to send someone like Logan's Run into the Jellicle air? I'm just saying that movie is way deeper than anyone wants to talk about.
Okay, so you mentioned cats. Okay, so this is in the video. One of the reasons I bring this up in the video is because of the writings of Cats is based off of the writings of T.S. Eliot, and Eliot is he's a really interesting figure in all this. I think a lot of people, I remember even back in the 2007 days of conspiracy culture, I remember people talking about Ezra Pound as being this sort of visionary for the conspiracy movement, because I remember there was this sort of lore about him of, he was put in an insane asylum because he said he believed in these conspiracies, and then they ended up realizing he was right and they let him out. And the history is not, that's not exactly true, and Pound ended up regretting he ended up changing his story by the end of his life.
Well, remember what he did, though. Okay, so Ezra Pound was into Keck. He was a Hecate enthusiast. This is totally... your synchronicity is too strong, bro.
I know. Yeah, you got it.
But like, he did radio fascist narration, so that was a big reason why it was hard to backtrack. You got all these recordings of yourself in Italy, going for both Mussolini and Franco. So absolutely. I mean, that kind of affected it. It'd be like being a Trump supporter like early on.
Well, right. So you're exactly. These guys were. I mean, so they're crucial to the sort of both the culture and the history, particularly in this type of study. Even though, I don't know many syncheads who think of themselves as poets, but if you study any McLuhan, so actually there's a really...
I'm one.
What's up?
Oh, I was laughing. I'm like, I'm one. I consider myself a poet. I like David White. I like McLuhan. I like Ezra Pound a lot. I'm all about T.S. Eliot. I think poetry is like, obvious synchronicity. What the hell else is it?
Well, like, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think it's something that we don't often associate. But even McLuhan makes the point that literally in the medieval tradition is that monks, Christian monks, would study poetry because if they could learn how to read between the lines of what was being said, look for connections, essentially synchronicities, all this sort of stuff, learn about the fluidity of that language and the sort of code breaking of poetry, that they could then apply that to the Bible. And it was literally absolutely. A practice.
Ignatius. This was Ignatian method. This is the Jesuit Ignatian, the spiritual exercises of Saint Ignatius, to which now are what Scientologists refer to as Dianetics. I mean, the idea of using each one of your senses as the sense of your empathy, because your eyes and your ears and your tongue and your ears are eardrums, your tongue is a drum, your nose, your eyes are photonic drums. Everything is touch. But if electrostatics are real, there is no touch. There's only the illusion or the actual sensation of feeling something else being touched. So empathy, the sixth sense, is the only real thing. So using the Ignatian method to go through poetry is the only way to really like connect with the Bible. This is the fundamental idea. Like, try to live it. Don't just let it die.
Yeah. So that idea is that you take that now into the modern age, and you get guys like Pound and Joyce and Eliot who are basically trying to apply this in a modern context, not only in their writing of poetry but in their sort of reading of the world. And to me, it's interesting. So Pound, I just can't get over how much of a sort of parallel to our current moment this is, in the sense of like seeing Pound basically is the guy who goes the QAnon route, right? Where he's like, I see all these, this must be a message. Oh, look, 7 months and 7 days ago, Donald Trump tweeted, and the third word of his tweet was frog, and now that's clearly proof. And it's like, holy shit, okay, like even as
That
a
is
synchead,
so Ezra Pound, yeah.
right. So it's like we're seeing how you can utilize this method, and you can very easily use it to it's okay, after studying synchronicity for all these years, something that I've come back to over and over again is that like it's a mirror for what's inside of you, right? So it's the same way you say like, what are we becoming, the things we fear? There's also the psychological concept of like projection. All these things kind of overlap, where you can read into the tea leaves of the moment, and how often are you really speaking about your own mental state? And you could see how Pound was someone who took that in this sort of dark direction, who went down this spiral into this one fascist direction. It's not, he's not like a criminal of history.
Yeah, he's actually like the benevolent. I'm so glad you fucking love Pound, dude, for so many reasons. Like, first off, not just that the Simpsons house is based on Homer's house. The Homer house is Thaddeus Pound's house. That's like Homer Pound house is the Simpsons house. So go back to your synchronicity. But also that Ezra Pound was the benevolent fascist. There are so many of these freaking people that are raised, like, for instance, Miguel Sereno. Like, he was friends with Herman Hesse and Carl Jung. He's like a neo-Nazi by accident, because he lives in Chile eating bananas and plantains, and he's in the summer all the time. He's having a good time. So his idea is Hitler's the avatar of Vishnu. And you're like, whoa, bro, chill out. But that's like Ezra Pound. Ezra Pound was like, maybe we have a Budarchy. Maybe we have this ascended master thing. I mean, he was hoping. What are the consequences of that?
That's just it. What are the consequences? I mean, you have this. That's a Platonic idea, right? Of the like.
Oh yeah, you want it. It should
king,
be.
Yeah, the king who actually understands. He's the enlightened master, and he's the one who should really rule the society.
Thank God, right? It'd be a lot easier. We wouldn't have to worry about things. I think a lot of AI people want to build the king like that. Instead you've got the fool for the day. But yeah, sorry, keep going.
Well, no. So I mean, this is sort of the secret of this. The pattern that I'm tracing historically, ritually. I take it in this video. I take it back to T.S. Eliot and Golden Bough. I think in previous writing that I've done. So here's something for your listeners. If anyone wants to go to thesyncbook.com/kings. KINGS. I've sort of compiled like a bunch of notes there, so you can find a video I made a few years ago. You can find like a book that I had started writing in around 2011, 2012.
There'll be a link underneath the page for people, so you can click on that.
But just to say, like, you can take the symbolism is so redundant throughout history. As the Golden Bough really shows, as some of my research has tried to point out. But what is the lesson there? And as you say, we're trying to build this king. We're putting our faith and hope into this enlightened master. And what we're really getting is this fool that is in a way, your Obamas and your Trumps. We can talk about how they're utilizing humanity as certain scapegoats. So Obama uses Osama bin Laden as a scapegoat, as a sort of a way to avoid having to be ritually sacrificed himself, kind of hoping for this magical result. Trump, I would argue, is doing the exact same thing in the last third of my current film. I'm showing sort of how the same symbolism, same exact language is coming out of Trump's mouth in the last year as it was out of Obama's. So trying to show how these guys are very much performing the same roles, but we as humanity often utilize those presidential figures as our scapegoats, as the thing that we can project onto. And again, that's why I say, like, these Tulpa-like nefarious politicians or entities or whatever, what are they but the thing that something we can put our blame onto. So if you're unhappy with what's happening right now, you can point to Barack Obama and you can say, see, he did it. And if you're someone else, you can point and you can say, look, Donald Trump's fault or whatever. Where I am frustrated lately particularly since I spent so much time in those trenches throughout those years, seeing things being said. Like, I keep seeing this thing getting shared about, like, what did Obama do during H1N1, and like that he didn't do enough, and why is Trump being accused of not doing enough, whatever. What's really funny is I remember all the conspiracy theorists at that time saying Obama was doing too much. So really the, like, right-wing sort of libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, Christian conspiracy, whatever the fuck you want to call this movement, they were freaking out that Obama was trying to use H1N1 to implant them with microchips and forced vaccines. And I remember, like, being at protests with people with these signs, and I'm like, holy shit, now suddenly we're in 2020, and your average person of that same or similar ideology at this point is going like, oh, Obama didn't do enough back then, and look how many people died, and aren't you mad at that guy? It's constantly like this, like, back-selling reality of, like, well, he didn't do it, why does our guy have to do it? Or it's fucking madness. But we have to take a step back, constantly take a step back, realize that we are projecting this onto these figures, that we have to take some responsibility ourselves, but then ultimately also have I used to say this all the time during Obama's presidency. I'm going to say it during Trump's. People used to say, oh, well, Obama doesn't really run the country, right? Like, he doesn't, whether it was like the Republicans won't let him pass that law or whatever fucking excuses people want to give. Why aren't we closing Guantanamo Bay? Oh, the Republicans just won't let him close it. He would have loved to, right? He would love to, he would love to end the war, but he just can't. Like, fuck you, and fuck all of you. And every time someone would give this, yeah, every time someone would give that excuse, I'd say, hey, man, I just don't believe it. Because even if you're the guy, the old, like, Bill Hicks joke, if they show you the clip of JFK and they say, any questions, like the cigar smoking guys who control the president. And I said, yeah, but if you were really a decent fucking person, at least in our dreams, Andreas, I have to imagine you're like me. At the end of the day, if you imagine yourself in that situation, you're like, fuck, I see everyone dying, or I see how horrible this is being run. I see the manipulation, the control, the government power being abused. I see all these things, and they're threatening to assassinate me if I try and do anything about it.
It might ruin my meal. It might make it hard to sleep.
It might make it hard to sleep.
I'll admit that I have feelings. Yeah.
Yeah. But I was gonna say, I don't know about you, but I have the fantasy that I would be like, all right, fuck it, shoot me. I'm gonna say this one thing. Let me say.
Yeah.
In the middle.
I wish I had more lives to give. I wish I had more lives to lose for my ideals. Right.
So the fact that Obama never had that moment where he said, you know what? Let me just tell you, I really want this, and they're putting a fucking gun to my head, and I can't do it. There was that moment never fucking came, right?
Yeah, dude, really. He's like, you know what? This is how it works. Deal with it. You're like, what? I don't know about that, buddy.
And I'm holding Trump to that same standard of why the fuck isn't he actually, and again, I don't mean from some QAnon, like maybe he's like behind the scenes, he's really, no, fuck that. Fuck that. I want someone, if I'm gonna put my faith or trust in anybody, particularly on some like being on the side of some righteous
Say it to my face.
righteous cause, they should be like, hey, this is what's going on. This is what I have to support it. This is what's going to happen, and so on, so on. And the fact that people think, oh, Trump has, makes these comments like he's on our side, but his actions don't follow through. It's the same thing with, it's every politician says these things, they don't follow through. Again, I don't want to get.
No, it's good. It's good, buddy. Like here's the deal. Like, these are the things I've been saying. What the heck? About for the last couple of years, because I saw very early this Hecate thing. I was a CNN journalist brought in through metadata. I basically kind of introduced hashtags, and then eventually I went to South America and I lived there for a while because I left the Turner thing when I got too freaked out. And I'd seen enough dystopian movies. Like, it's funny, the references to Logan's Run in Cats and like Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats, like that's something I've thought about myself. So I was just like blown away, basically, like that you noticed it, but not really like shocked, because like I know that you see these kinds of things pretty often. But it was just such a good point. And it's like, so for so long I've been like, dude, like we should talk about these things, like for, like, because it's not that I put my green horse at the end of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. My green horse I don't put in any one of these races, but my God, if it's not happening, like, dude, you see it too. And so it makes me, that story was supposed to lead to, I went and filmed Bernie Sanders. I was there. I have a selfie with me while he's got the bird on his podium. Like at the thing, I was at that thing. I stood a meter from Trump. I had these sunglasses on and a red V-neck, and some security guard walked in, and I looked cool enough and Chad enough, and probably, as you might think, police state enough in my outfit, that they let me just follow him all the way to the front and stand right next to the Latinos for Trump and the Chinese businessmen for Trump and the Obama mamas that have become Trump mamas. There's all these things. And I could see him like from 3 or 4 feet away. I was like, whoa, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. It's like, it looked like Indiana Jones when he gets his yearbook signed from Hitler, because it was this long tube and everyone was in a long line all the way to the back, and they're all like chanting, hurrah, hurrah. And I was at the front of it. It was like, what's going on? And then I saw Hillary Clinton. I was probably one of the few people that did. I don't think anyone else went to her damn rallies. It was completely empty, besides a few paid journalists and a few paid secret crisis actors or whatever. But then I went to Cleveland, right? So when I saw Trump for the second time, and this is, I saw him in California and it was crazy. I saw him in Cleveland. It was insane. It was like the biggest lunatic thing. I also met Vermin Supreme. That was my favorite. I like Vermin Supreme, Free Ponies, Gingivitis, Travel Back in Time and Kill Hitler. All of these are good policies to stand by. So Vermin Supreme. But I saw Trump again, and I saw all these supporters for Trump, and I was a little busy like doing that, but I wanted to do some other things while I was in Cleveland. I'd never been to the middle of the United States before. I mean, I've been all over the world, but who would go to the middle? If you're from California and you travel across the United States, someone's going to put a meth pipe in your car and arrest you. They're going to just make you, this is the story they told us. Like, and everyone else, you're like, why didn't you get all the way to California? You're like, wait, did you, on the Oregon Trail, did your family drop their wagon? Like, what happened? What happened? Why did you give up? Why didn't you make it? So we're all scared of the Midwest. Now I'm in Minnesota, and I'm like, it's very weird to me how it works now. But I get into the Midwest, and I go to Cleveland, Ohio, and it's pretty cool. It's like just outside of New York as far as I'm concerned. And there's the Keck frog of Hecate in the museum of the Natural History Museum of Cleveland. And this is what I'm seeing the same week that Trump is in this thing. All while, this is really early on, the Pepe the Frog thing is becoming this Egyptian mythology. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm surrounded in it. So what is the Keck? What the Keck is going on with all of this symbolism? And at the end of the day, like, I mean, I'm still kind of wondering, like, are there, okay, so Back to the Future, right? This is, I think, you you've seen the movie, right? Like you have an opinion on Back to the Future.
I've seen Back to the Future a few times. Yeah.
Yeah, right. What would you say? Okay, can we do that? Can we talk really? I know we've been for 2 hours. You feel like going into it? All right. Talk about Back to the Future. How do you feel about Back to the Future? Let's just put it that way.
How do I feel about it? I mean, it's in. I don't. If I feel about the movie is that it's like, I guess it's a part of my childhood, but it's from this point it doesn't age well in the sense of like, 80s. I don't have a ton of like 80s nostalgia for like, Reagan-esque go capitalist propaganda of the 80s, but it's a fun movie. It's definitely part of my childhood. And then of course it was a big thing for me a few years ago. Joe Alexander made that video, Back to the Future Predicts 9/11.
Totally. The best Back to the Future sync video I think so far. Tell me if I'm wrong, but that's a pretty good one. It's a pretty good one.
It's a great video. It really did it. That was a magical act, and I mean, that was like a thing where I got a phone call. I was at work. I was just working in some shitty restaurant. I get this phone call and it's like, "Hey, you're quoted in the like Washington Post or something." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And they're like, "What are they quoting me about?" And they're like, "Oh, Back to the Future and synchronicity." And yeah, that was a weird, wild ride. But it's, that's the sort of situation where something again is so kind of like the material I laid out in my current video, this Hindsight 2020 episode 3, right? It's a thing where the data starts to pile up and it gets so specific and it's like, wow, okay, these exact names are being used or these exact dates, or it just lines up so fucking perfectly. Well, what does that mean? With Back to the Future, it's a similar sort of situation where it's like it just keeps the dots keep aligning, and did you happen to see the first video in the Hindsight 2020 series? I did. The reason I bring that video up is because this question of like what is intentional and what's synchronicity sort of haunts me. And I think Back to the Future 9/11 is a great example. Like you watch Joe's Back to the Future video and you're like, holy shit, is this synchronicity, or is this like someone sending some sort of coded message? So like Joe goes into the idea of all the 9/11s on the clocks, the like striking of the tower, which obviously has like all this like tarot symbolism.
The upside down Twin Pines Mall becomes the Lone Pines Mall.
Oh, yeah. So exactly, the two towers become a single tower. In Back to the Future 2, they actually show the World Trade Center falling
up because the guy's standing on his head, so it's yeah. All right, it's beautiful. You guys gotta watch it. It's good.
I highly recommend. I mean, Joe's video is maybe like 9 minutes long. It's fantastic. If you haven't seen that.
Back to the Future Predicts 9/11. Please check it out.
And that video was, that was a huge phenomenon that's had like, I don't know, maybe it's like 4 million views or something, but it was like on like a ton of media outlets. There's something
about the sarcastic enthusiasm for which he presents it, because he makes it seem like he really is like a conspiracy theorist, which I don't think any of us really are, but we're put on that's what we're doing by like seeing patterns. So he's like in the movie Back to the Future, it has that kind of value to it. Whereas like the 9/11 Spider-Verse is just like, hey, like, what? This is what's really happening. This is what's happening in our world, and I witnessed it. So they changed the posters. Like, did you? Like, I think you did. Like, it's a little.
You say change the posters?
Oh, I mean, okay, so when I think of the Spider-Verse, so for everyone who's the Sync Book Press, you should see Hindsight 2020. The series that he's doing, Alan Green's series, is really interesting. And episode 1, which it was just last year, I think August, he started doing it. I was like, okay, this guy's, this guy still got it. He still feels like there's a value to expressing himself about these things. It talks a lot about 9/11. It talks about 2001, what was going on during when Spider-Man came out, and it was a huge. I think people who lived through this, if they had a broader imagination in mind, should associate 9/11 with Spider-Man, because that was the movie that was out that week, right? And that was back when people still went to movies. It was a huge. I mean, so a lot of people should associate it with that. And the first time Spider-Man aired was different than the third or fifth or something time, because then they took out the scene where he's going from the Twin Towers between the two towers with his spider thread, and they removed this scene, and then they replaced.
I don't want to interrupt you. I do want to clarify, because I think your memory is just slightly off, just for the sake of being accurate.
Oh, please do.
Is to say that it wasn't the movie, and they didn't like change the movie. It was that was the trailer. So they had a Spider-Man trailer that was then pulled.
There was a poster.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, they had the posters. Yes,
right. Absolutely. No, you're right. I'm sorry. You're right.
So the posters were changed. So basically, it was like before the movie was released, all the marketing material. So yes, you're absolutely. I forgot the poster. The poster had the Twin Towers reflected in his eye. I used that graphic on my video, and the trailer where he catches like a helicopter flies between the Twin Towers, and they pulled all that marketing material because of 9/11.
Right, and that was kind of the changeover, I think, in a lot of the tone of media, because at that point media was a lot more free. You had Marilyn Manson, you had Blair Witch Project, you had blue hair, and then all of a sudden, Hot Topic and Kitty was done, and it was time for white iPods. It was the whole society went Patriot Act very quickly, and they started moving towards removing,
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember there was a whole slew of things where it was like there was some Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where he's a firefighter that gets like his family gets killed in a terrorist attack, and he fights these terrorists. That was supposed to come out the week after 9/11. They pushed that movie back. There was a TV show 24 with Kiefer Sutherland, which ends with terrorists blowing up an airplane. And they, of course, Fox did still air that. What else? There's a movie called Big Trouble with like Tim Allen and I don't know. It's written by Dave Barry, and that movie features
Rene Russo.
Yeah. The movie features an atomic bomb getting smuggled onto an airplane and going off, and it's like literally has a scene where they like sneak the bomb past the airport security and all this. So basically that movie was supposed to come out right around 9/11. They pushed that movie back. I remember going to see that movie in the theaters. It came out like a few months later, but that movie had such a small like marketing budget, and they already spent it because the movie was supposed to come out, so they already printed all their posters and ran all their ads and whatever. So when I remember going to see that movie in the theaters, and like where every other movie had like an actual, I mean now I guess it's like done digitally, but you remember I don't know, sort of like a rectangular picture of basically like a movie poster but squashed rectangular next to like the showtimes or something, right?
Oh yeah.
Or like on the this theater, and you're going through door number 6 and it's got a poster for whatever. All the stuff for Big Trouble was literally like pieces of paper with like Sharpie. Someone had written it and taped to the walls because literally they had no more marketing budget for it. So that movie was like a total dud because it was too close to 9/11. So these are things I don't even cover in that video, but to say like there's so many things we could say where like 9/11 is predicted in these other media. We can see how this kind of works where in some cases artists have these visions that totally align, and in some cases, maybe like with it's the X-Files branch off, Lone Gunman it's called, that like the Lone Gunman episode,
yeah,
where it's like it's almost like so on point. like so explicitly on
It
point.
makes you come on, yeah,
You're right.
right.
And it's like,
You telling
wait,
me
this
that
is
they aren't
written
doing
by,
this on
yeah.
purpose? I mean, come on. I think it's pretty clear that they do. Okay, you heard David Plate story when he went to see the writer from, I forget which one, from The Simpsons, and that's probably better that I don't remember his name. But do you ever heard this? Did David tell you this story when he was like in Santa Cruz at the Atlantis comic book shop and he just happened to be there the day that the signing was, and they never told anyone because they wanted it to be a surprise. So he was the only one there for the thing.
I have heard this story, yeah, but
Yeah, I
probably you
mean,
should tell it. It's a good story.
well, I just like that bit. Just the point was he asked him like, "Do you guys do it on purpose?" You know, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, like we try." Like I mean, we're okay. So here's the deal: we're all Yale educated. We all live in Connecticut and around New York City. We go there on train whenever we want. We see the world for what it is. We have time to think about it in the country. But yeah, we get boons. We get boons if we do it in a mysticistic way. And if people don't notice it, that's better. And if they do, we might get a score down. It's actually like if an episode's too strong, then they'll put it in a shelf like the Prince Vault until they release it a year or 5 year later when people have already gotten used to it. Like because it doesn't take long for people to get used to things. But if the episode's too clearly revealing, then they pull it before it airs. But they do
And
like
and I believe he was referring not so much to like, the whole idea of Simpsons predicting things, but that he said they were like really interested in esoterica, so these different occult ideas or esoteric ideas that they were trying to incorporate. It's the same, and again, like,
sync is part of it.
oh sure, but I mean, like, I don't know how you plan. I don't know how you plan sync. So what you can do is you can. Well, this has been my experience after what, maybe 12 years of studying this, is to say, like, I think sometimes it's, for lack of a better term, it's just fun to incorporate some of these ideas into your artwork that is not otherwise about it, and you could just be informed by, or you're reminded of something, and it's like, oh, this would be kind of fun if I did it like this, or if I used this number or this whatever. I mean, there's a ton of that just happens. But then there's also, I've had this conversation with a number of sync heads of how do you build something in a way that it allows for synchronicity, and it's sort of trusting in the chaos in such a way that it's less, I think it's less like, hey, I have an idea that this event is going to happen, and me as a Simpsons writer, how can I like predict the future in this episode, or sneak this data in there? It's more like, hey, what if I play with these archetypes? And this is specifically just going to the David Plate example, because I remember the guy, he was talking about a specific episode he wrote of Futurama, where Bender becomes God, and David's asking him about like these different philosophical ideas that come up in this episode, and the guy says like, hey, we study all this sort of stuff, but if we put it in too explicitly, it's going to get rejected. So you have to kind of like just hint at these elements, or put in a little nods and winks here and there. So I've seen TV shows where it's like, why is there a 33 in every shot? Why is there, someone says like, instead of saying do what you want, they say do what thou wilt, or, like whatever, right? Like little things here and there. Does that mean they've got some pact or some divine knowledge of what's going to happen in the future? No, I don't think so. But I'm sure.
They're hoping for a boon.
I spent so much time with artists that I understand how they'd be the first ones to be surprised when something of theirs turns out to be an actual prediction.
This is true. I hate to admit it myself, but I've been through this circumstance where I'm like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, definitely, I meant to do that. not.
Right. It's literally, that was the event. Okay, so I could tell you, I don't have a specific like node of what it was, but I was in 2000, maybe like, okay, I'm gonna say starting around 2006 or so. I started writing this book that was ended up being called "Look at All the Happy Creatures," and it's literally a conspiracy novel of like 1984 Animal Farm, but with like this weird sci-fi psychedelic twist. And I'm like, that's like at the height of my fucking paranoia about conspiracy stuff, and everything looked nefarious to me at that time. And I'm writing this story, and I'm still thinking in terms of what's commonly referred to as predictive programming. So when you would see what I would now consider a synchronicity, at the time it's like, oh, they meant to do that. And I'm writing this story about conspiracies and about predictive, and I'm literally using the phrase like predictive programming and shit like that in this book. And then things start to happen in real life that I had written about in this book. And I had this realization that was like, oh my God, if I didn't know me and saw my writing, I would think I knew. I would think I'm in on it or something, right? But I know damn well my intention was the exact opposite. My intention was to like wake people up to the evils of the world. And I'm like, holy shit, I think literally just by creating artwork, by engaging with these, for lack of a word, I mean, this magic. I mean, to make something, to put down ideas, to transform, to transmute ideas and shapes and colors and sounds and words into a new thing is an alchemical, magical process that is going to lend itself to synchronicities. It's going to lend itself to this kind of seeping in. It is a form of chaos magic, almost going back to what we talked earlier. And I think we're so quick to assign intentionality when we see things like that in media. And again, I think there are cases that are, of course, to think like the CIA is involved in the Hollywood is obvious, right? Like, I mean, there's literally like the CIA has a division that is like an entertainment industry branch of the CIA. Like that is like that's like an on the record fact. So yes, of course they have the games that they're playing, but I think artistry, like actual like you can't control what happens with your artwork as you're creating it, after you've created it. You're tapping into something. I believe even the CIA guy trying to make the most like explicit propaganda would probably be susceptible to the same forces as everything else in the universe, and there might be elements where that dude didn't plan for it. Again, that doesn't remove any guilt from that party or anything like that. I just mean to say,
but totally.
I think the synchronicity is so much more prolific than we think, and particularly when we're in the mindset of like looking for who to blame or who's aware, who's in control, all these questions. And I think when it comes to artwork, what I've learned again and again and again from personal experience and from talking to people, it's just not there. Can I give one more example? Is my friend Will Morgan, he used to host 42 Minutes, and I have a friend, Andros Jones. He does a show called Radio 8 Ball, right? And Andros was used to be in like some like B Hollywood movies. He was in like Nightmare on Elm Street 3 or 4, I'm not sure which. I don't know, some like not great movies.
Okay. But it's not, I mean, come on, the fourth one. It's pretty, I'm just kidding.
I mean, I'm sure it's fine, whatever. But my point is, Will had been doing this synchromystic study for a number of years before he met Andros, where he would be like, oh, let me look at, when like Jake Kotze would do like Zooey Deschanel or whatever, like here we'll make a video of like compiling all her movies, and this is the same imagery comes up over and over. There's a great Jake Kotze one called Jennifer Jupiter, I think it's called, and it's Jennifer Connelly, and you see how in every fucking Jennifer Connelly movie, she's like, there's broken glass and broken mirrors, and it's just like over and over, and it's just like this like nonstop barrage of different movies you've never heard of, where the same imagery is used in all these movies, and it gets to the point where you're like, what is going on here? This has got to be intentional, right? So we meet Andras, and Andras is a really good friend of mine, and he's very open about his successes and lack of successes in Hollywood. Again, this is not like somebody who's making millions of dollars. This is someone who's in a bunch of like B movies and C movies. And Will starts working with Andras, and Andras supplies him with like, here's all the movies I've ever been in. Tell me, what you see here, basically. And Will turned that into, I think, a 3-video series. And like Andras was like stunned, right? And now after that, Andras is like, so now he's aware of like the imagery that's in every project he's in. And just recently he did a music, and one of the things that came up for Andras was this mirror, like this like reflection in the mirror, like there was constantly the shot of him being in front of a mirror, looking in a mirror, all these sorts of things. And it was just like, again, it was this thing where it's like it comes up again and again and again and again, these same shots. And Andras was not aware of it during the years of the many years over which these things were filmed. He never made that connection personally, but now he knows that, right? So just a few months ago, he's making a music video, and he said, this guy who's directing the music video comes and goes, hey, I have this idea for the music video, and it's basically like you standing in front of this mirror. And Andras said, like, he just laughed to himself, and he's not going to tell the director, like, hey, that's like my synchromistic attracting symbolism or something. But he didn't suggest it to the director either. It was just something the director said, this is what I want to do with you. And Andras is like, all right, well, that's really funny. Sure, let's just do it. But again, from outside that would look like intentional. Like, well, now that now you're still doing it, and that you're using this symbolism. He's like, no, it wasn't even my decision. So there's so much of that. And by having these conversations and being able to, over a course of many years, have these conversations and keep track of basically the results. These are media experiments, synchronicity experiments that we're able to do. And I think there's a sort of, without sounding too highfalutin, there's sort of a scientific aspect of being able to document. If Will Morgan made this video 4 years ago and is able to document, hey, this is the thing that comes up in every Andras Jones film, and now he's when he gets work again, that imagery is still coming up. There's something to that, and I don't think it's necessarily, it's just not always nefarious or planned.
Okay, so this is interesting. I mean, I've been wanting to ask this since actually the beginning of this, but I was like, okay, let's do this really weird, and I'll start a conversation with this guy, and then it accidentally just unfolded into, discordic event of perfection. But there is a fundamental quality to my interviews. I like to ask a few questions, like, where are you? What's going on? What do you think is the definition of the thing you're obsessed with? And that's where we're at now. So please tell me, what is synchromysticism? What the heck is synchromysticism? What do you even think that means, really, at this point?
I mean, it's a word that I don't associate with as strongly as I once did.
It's a big, powerful word. Like,
it
sounds like you take it differently than you did when I first heard of you. I'm curious what you used to think and what you think now.
Well, so when I first came to it, it was sort of I would say it was a way of looking at the world, which is just paying attention to coincidences. It was particularly when it was first introduced to me, this was coming out of Jake Katz's coining of the phrase, and he is very much like a movie watching person, right? So like for him, it was watching movies, as many movies as he could watch, and just pointing out all these like coincidences within the films. And I do not watch that much television or movies. I never have. Probably the height of my film watching in that way was when I was really involved with the synchronistic community, and I embraced it less because of my love for like Hollywood films, and more because I thought of film as this great bridge between the sort of strange niche, almost like kind of academic, kind of woo-woo bullshit that I was talking about with my friends on the internet, and how do I relay that to the common person, or just, you know, a friend of mine outside of this little corner of the internet. Talking about synchronicity, talking about magical ideas, talking about even conspiracies, talking about all these things, they're just so loaded. But a movie, it felt like, well, a movie, we can, you know, everyone has, as you said, everyone's seen Back to the Future. You were able to say to me, come on, I'm surely you've seen Back to the Future and have an opinion on it. You can say that to most people around the globe. It's why Joe Alexander, not only was his video just expertly made, but another reason it sort of had that widespread moment is because it's a universal subject. Everyone has seen Back to the fucking Future. We've all seen it. We all know it. Cool. It's a common understanding. It's a common language. And it's almost like I began to think of it then as like a shared dream. If I tell you, oh man, last night I had this crazy dream, blah, 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 you're going to tune out at some point because that's my personal experience and it's just not that interesting. But if we were able to watch the same dream or experience the same thing, we could then have a much better conversation. So cool, let's both watch Back to the Future, and what do you get out of it? And that was where I used to be with synchromysticism, is I thought it was this great avenue for getting the information out, just bridging that gap between what is so out there woo-woo and what is so just like mainstream pop culture garbage would serve to bridge that gap. I think the way that word or my relationship to the ideas around it has changed is that I've come to take both. So synchromysticism is a portmanteau of synchronicity and mysticism, obviously, right? But I take both of those words and both of those concepts much more seriously at this point in my life. And it's why when I said I was very opposed to the Keck sort of meme magic in 2016 because I thought it was irresponsible chaos magic.
Totally was. Yeah. It was like discordic to a fault. Yeah.
To a fault. Right. And that's just it. So it's like, I think I seemed like a sort of joy kill sometimes of like, hey. But I think it's also from the experience of I've seen how my own, I used a phrase for years called sloppy chaos magic, where every now and then I'd say, hey, is this synchronicity, or is this like me accidentally kind of causing this to happen, and not even just because my magic was too sloppy.
Being possessed by something. I don't know. As a Catholic raised kid myself, I saw it as a similar. I don't ever think that you were a buzzkill to that movement. I think, okay, I love Christopher Knowles, and I think he's a genius, and he's a very interesting person. And some of the work it's like Neil Gaiman, he's a very interesting guy. But at the same time, he maybe more was by shutting down his group a kill of buzz, in the sense that the Secret Sun was a buzz. It was a great thing, and I don't think shutting it down was the right move. I will go on record as saying that. I still love the guy, and I understand his decision, and I respect him for it. But with you never did anything like that. I don't think that you were, but the thing was, you were trying to not let it go out of control, especially in your quarters. And this is a very important thing in magic, that, if you have a welcome mat instead of a follow the rules of the house mat, that it's different. But if you have a follow the rules of the house mat, you're in a better position, because you should say, in my own sphere of influence, I would like to control as much as possible the outcome of consequences from the intentions of not just myself, but those who I associate with, because I understand that they can have effects too. So that's a pretty respectable thing to do. I think the problem was, and I think in general, like the time, everyone was very scared. There's a lot of people that were worried about what was going to happen. The problem wasn't that was, a irrational fear. It was more that people were afraid to talk about it because we'd already been through this thing. I had the same experience as you, man. Like I felt like with Obama even being elected, like I remember 2007. I only kind of heard about you maybe 2010, but 2007 was for me also a very important year. I mean, I was really into Kundalini yoga, going at 3 o'clock in the morning, but I would take route pit stops at this mescaline cactus part of the highway in my region of California, let's say. And there was a Ron Paul sign, and I used to be really into Ron Paul and libertarianism. I was like, we need to like step away from both parties, la la la. But taking mescaline and DMT and doing yoga in 2007, I felt like there was so much evidence that the world was in a, there was a change going on that we needed to discuss. And then so I felt like that was the whole point in 2016. It was like, wow, we've culminated at this point where discordics have allowed themselves to manifest this thing. And what is it? And if we don't discuss it, where are we going to get? And I started getting really scared because I started looking at a lot of the members of the community that were willing to be a part of evil over good, one way or the other, the same way that you're talking about. I'm not talking about just people that said they were going to love Trump or hate Trump, right? Because both sides were like, okay, well, we need to shut down groups. We need to sacrifice dogs. There were like crazy people that were doing witchcraft things against Trump. It was like, what the hell's going on? We're going to do these spells against the president. Then at the same time, what is the other side doing? Well, they're doing the same thing. They're praying for Ebola. I mean, what? Like that. And so it just seems so crazy that it was the exact same thing as when in 2007 and 2008, Obama was being elected. Because when Obama was being elected, we were talking about Trump, not at all, except for as like an apprentice show. And most of what we were thinking was there was this 9/11 thing. I think, we talked about the idea that a lot of people just made the Loose Change documentary for fun. And it turned out to be way more true than even they realized, And then when they started to find out, like, okay, well, there are a lot of people involved in this thing, there came about this idea of not just conspiracy theorists, but truthers, quote unquote. I think now you and I are more into synchromysticism or relationships, where like you're not saying that the world, even if Bilderberg exists, that makes sense. There should be somebody like Jordan Peterson who's writing parts of the code because we want somebody to try. That's fine that people are trying. There should be like an effort to make a world a better place, even if they're failing at it by doing it wrong. We want that. So it's not that it's a conspiracy. It's in the transparent. But there are relationships between people. And this idea that if there's truth, all of a sudden people are truthing. They're trying to find this abstract notion of truth. Well, I was naive in 2007. I thought, you know what? Obviously, you see the videos, you're going to be like, truth is you can vote for Pepsi, Coca-Cola, or truth.
Right.
But people instead, what happened in 2007 was Shepard Fairey. It was obey. And to me, obey was not truth. That was They Live. That was the sunglasses. That was the aliens from Arrival with Charlie Sheen. That was a lot of other movies than truth. That was a lot more dystopian than truth. And so I always was very scared of that. But I was also aware, in 2008, when it came, whatever came would be just there to replace the Fool for a Day. So that people sacrifice the Fool for a Day and the program keeps going on. So it was very strange to me that this dude born 77 years, 7 months, and 7 days before his inauguration, right on the inauguration, it's 777, he comes out as president, right? Of course, not that he's poor or anything else, But there's so much there that you have to wonder, like, what's going on with synchromysticism and Hecate and this whole idea that chaos is ordered by symbolism. I mean, we're seeing it in our pop culture. Do you know about gadgetology? You remember the Rescue Rangers? You know that like show with Chippendale?
Oh, I know Rescue Rangers very well, yeah.
Do you know about gadgetology?
Is that the like cult that worships Gadget?
Hell yes. So like I know Tad Stones, and he makes Tadpole. That's hilarious. Talking about frogs, but Tad Stones made Darkwing Duck, and he made Rescue Rangers, and I like the guy. He's a really cool guy.
He like created the shows?
Oh yeah, no, this guy's
Cool.
yeah, he's a nice dude. But like he
I love Darkwing Duck, yeah.
yeah, Darkwing Duck, dude, the terror that flaps, man, in the dark. But he went to Russia, and I was like, oh, dude, you're gonna meet the gadgetologists. And he's like, what? So he gets there, and all of a sudden the gadgetologists show up, and there's all of these Russian people that after the war and after the world was told that they weren't allowed to have religion, created their own chaos religion where they worship the goddess who is the sister of the creator, and they call her, like, instead of Ma'at, which is Ma'at's the order of Egyptian chaos magic. You have Seth and you have Ma'at. Instead, they have Gadget, and Gadget Hack Wrench is their goddess, and they put little stickers of her mouse hood all over their candles, and they walk around, and it's the future of chaos magic in Russia. And I was laughing, like, well, don't worry, you're not going to be too worried about the COVID virus because they have Gadget, and Gadget's the cure to the whole disease. Like, all you have to do is worship Gadget instead of Corona Chan, and you'll probably be fine. I mean, it was a joke, but it's like, this is where we're at with chaos sigils on the internet, where like that would be a reasonable answer from an autist on 4chan. So I mean, I don't know. That's my spiel on like where we're at in terms of that whole thing. But I don't think you were wrong at all to be concerned about it. It's just more like we didn't talk about it enough. I think the whole world didn't talk about it enough. They weren't interested in the mysticism that's happening. I'm just not willing to pronounce it properly. Synchromysticistic, like, qualities of what happened, and that's even the people though, and that I'm more concerned. I mean, people that normally ignore things, that's fine, but in terms of the secret sun, the kitchen sink, just the fact that people didn't want to address it then, I feel like, well, here we are. That's kind of my I don't have a judgment other than this is the consequences. Now we're here. And then we have to, at some point, notice, like, the similarities. Have you heard of Fomenko? Do you know Anatoly Fomenko? Have you heard of that, the Russian chronologist?
No, I don't know that.
So there's this dude in Russia from the Soviet Union, and there's 1,000 of them. There's really a bunch of people that worked for him, and he was a chronologist. And he found, if you took these, and this is before we had Google, but now it's really impressive when you look at it on a map, the timelines of these popes from these 500 years, and the popes from these 500 years, and these kings from here and the kings from there, and you realize that you have 13 generations where they all have the same birthdays, the same length of time, to the next ruler who has the same birthday and length of time for 13 generations. And so what he was suggesting that there was actually 13 different timelines that were stacked on top of each other. Now, the Jesuits in the 1700s had actually erased history. We know this because they were excommunicated. The Catholic Church kicked the Jesuits out of the church. So they ended up deciding to pick up, like you were talking about Pope John Paul II. They dug the Pope up 50 years or 60 years. Who knows? This is like the Matrix. We don't really know what year it is. Like, they dug up the Pope from whichever year had excommunicated the Jesuits 50, 60, 70 years later, and they put him on trial, took his corpse, and pulled his soul out of heaven, quote unquote. And they acted like he was never Pope. And it's like, how alcohol was prohibited and now it's not prohibited, but the prohibition is still in the Constitution. They just acted like everything he wrote was gone. So we don't know what year it is, and all of these years have been changed. So there's this whole idea that the Jesuits have messed with our history, and the whole fundamental idea is the synchronicity of these 13 generations. There's this idea that we're 1,000 years different than we would expect, because the calendars used to put, in the Latin there was an I versus a J, Indiana Jones says, but it's a J for, instead of 1 in front of the years 1990, it would have been 990 in the year of J. or I. So this is where we're at, is this idea that we don't know our history. We're in this matrix synchronicity, and all of a sudden they're presenting us the exact, I mean, the video you just put out is the exact same story as the fire of London in 1666 burns down everything. All the libraries are destroyed. Isaac Newton comes out with everything. And the world goes into change, right? We have John Wilmot, the Earl of Rochester, the Libertine movement, the Jesuits, the King James Bible. It all happens in this period of burning everything down because of this sort of, synchromysticistic quality. I don't know. I feel like we're in this sort of repeat right now, and people aren't looking at it like that. They're not so concerned, but it's like, well, yet at the same time, people have mentioned this is an Egyptian god associated with chaos and with plagues and with apocalypse.
Oh,
So what are the synchromysticistic qualities? What are the problems that we're missing? We're missing right now. Like, where is this going? Are we going in a good place? And that's why I think, we need to talk about that more, because people aren't concerned with that. That is my main concern ever about Keck, because if it's not talked about, well, then it's just manifesting even more. Like, if you know about it and you don't care about the outcome, okay, you're definitely helping it. But if you don't know about it at all, how much more are you consenting to it happening,
Yeah, and I that's my hope. So the video that I just released, honestly, it's funny because like I've been working with this material for years, right? And I almost didn't make this video because I was like, well, how do I show, like, I know to me it feels significant, but how do I show to others why I think this is significant to revisit this moment in time, this like specific weekend in 2011, and trying to show how it's relevant again, and in this very specific and powerful way. And I struggled with that, and I kind of at some point just threw my arms up and was like, well, I'm gonna make this video for me, even just as a way to like process the information. I just have like, notes and notes and notes, and how do I just kind of like trim it down and boil it down and make sense of it even for myself. I find that incredibly therapeutic, to try and transmute the scattered ideas and notes that I've taken and turn it into something that's that makes some sort of sense, that's easy to follow.
Yeah. I mean,
So
it's
that
only
helps.
easy to follow if they trust that your experiences from your expertise are like actually based on real experiences. I mean, but also at the same time, everything that you mention, it doesn't ask anyone to trust in anything. They're just expected to, if you experience this too, do you feel the correlation? So I think that's a big part of that synchromistic. I'm not even going to bother anymore. Synchromistic. Let's just leave
Yeah,
it.
we usually say synchromystic.
I know, but it's.
But you could say like I said, I'm not beholden to any phrasing at this point. It's like if anything, I think
You can't climb down a ladder, Alan.
sure.
Rules, according to Frank Baum and Madame Blavatsky. Keep going.
Well, I get if I've climbed the ladder of synchromysticism and have to die on it, I mean it's fine. But I guess what I'm saying is like I end up using that phrase, particularly. I mean, I love the phrase synchronicity. I love the phrase synchromysticism. I don't know that I ever fully got out of it what Jake did, and so like that's again, it comes to the question of intention. What did he intend, and how does that phrase change over time? But anyway, regardless, like I said, you could use whatever phrasing you want. It was more to save you the trouble of trying to be something precise. That I'm like, I don't know that anybody cares about the precise language of that phrasing.
Well, okay, what about the Tao of it? Okay, so we're getting to this point where you have to say to yourself, do you believe that there really is something mystical, or is grace the knot that ties chaos together? Do you think that is Hecate, is Hecate, is Keck, are these consciousness experiences. So you started this by saying you didn't see yourself believing in this omega point God because you don't believe in a single parent who writes books. More or less, you don't see it as that's the God who's talking to you, but you see patterns, and you think that the weather, you don't need a weatherman to tell you where the wind is blowing. I mean, I respect that completely, but do you feel like then it's just it sounds more and more like you're seeing more and more or less synchronicity, and you're seeing more and more chaos that individuals are noticing in their own prejudice? Is that how you feel, or do you really feel that there is something there, that there's some kind of an energy that is fundamental, that is synchronizing everything? Is there some sort of truth or grace beyond the chaos? Is it just chaos? Like,
I think I think the chaos is what is often deemed as chaos is a certain aspect of the hidden order, in the sense of like like what's his name? Oh God, Laramie. So there's my friend John used to talk with this guy. He was trying to model like weather systems, and he kept trying to like model just different like weather patterns, and it just seemed so chaotic, and he ended up with this really weird fucking graph. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, this is a pattern. It's a wild pattern, but here is the pattern, right? And it's gosh, I wish I could think. Anyway, it's something like that, where that's an answer I kind of keep coming back to, where it's like, this feels like chaos from one head space of like just like looking at it. It's like, oh my God. And then when you start to actually pay attention to it and you see all these patterns, if you feel certain recurring energetics, and not only as you experience it, but I do feel like there is, to answer your question, I feel like there is definitely something. There is an energetic that you can engage with. And that could be, just because you can engage with it doesn't make it good or bad, or
totally.
Chaotic or peaceful or graceful. Nietzsche said, right, you stare into the abyss.
Hey, don't
the abyss
use the
stares
N word. It offends me. Oh, I'm so glad I got to do that.
It's right. So he says the abyss stares back. In the same way, I think staring into the patterns of synchromysticism might stare back. And I constantly have experienced that it feels like I'm having a conversation with something, or that there's a give and take to something. So I definitely do think there's something out there. I'm not a anti-spiritualist. I'm not denying something bigger than myself, but I think the very things that so synchronicity, Carl Jung said, is a correlation between your inner and outer state. So, you're thinking about a plate of shrimp, and suddenly there's a plate of shrimp. That's an inner state and outer state coalescing. Well, in this sense, we keep coming to this question, well, is it all in my head, or is this happening in the real world? And it's like, I feel like, no, by definition, it is both. Literally, by definition, it's saying this is matching this. So it might be that we are projecting our inner state onto the world, or that the outer world is seeping into our subconscious, or that they are somehow one and the same, or that that's an entity that I'm having a relationship with. All the different explanations you could throw at it, but at the end of the day, it boils down to the same. You're going to have the same circumstances, no matter how you want to explain it. So I was saying, like, did coronavirus escape from a lab, or did it come out of some guy eating bat soup?
Yeah, did 9/11 happen, or did Afghanistan happen afterwards? Like, which matters more? Come on. Like, the thing that matters more is the consequences than the formula. Did people have good intentions when Keck brought the police state, or did they have bad intentions? Who's going to care in 5 minutes? Like,
right.
Really.
If there's a Nazi policeman at my fucking door, that's really all I care about. I'm not going to
That's going to be a bummer,
Yeah.
Are you here on behalf of Are you here on behalf of Trump or Nancy Pelosi? You know what, man? Either way, I don't want to be in either one of their fucking camps. How about that?
Oh, okay, fair enough. Femme Fatale. That'll be a good movie, I think, someday.
Yeah.
That Britney Spears album is pretty strong. Okay, well, we're about 3 hours in, man. I feel like this is like a solid piece. Is there anything you want to go over that you feel like either I or anyone else has ever inhibited you from talking about, let alone, is there something that you don't get to talk about much? This is my usual thought, is like, what do you not usually get to talk about that you feel like you want to express?
No, I feel like we've covered really good ground here. I'll throw out one thing that, like, literally when you messaged me that you, like, we were ready to start the call, and I was like, hey, give me a few more minutes. I was going through some old media trying to find something. I keep seeing in the last 48 hours this really, and I think part of it is just the Democratic Party hoping to, like, backpedal from Biden, but still refusing to acknowledge Bernie Sanders as a viable option. And I've
Bummer,
seen,
right?
it is a bummer. But I keep seeing all these people and different news articles and people sharing this idea of Andrew Cuomo as the next guy, even though we're halfway through the
What?
primary.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about. I don't even know. Like more. Tell me more. What?
I've now collected like 6 different articles from different sources and even just like people on Facebook. So the current governor of New York, who, by the way, as an ex-New Yorker, Cuomo's a total piece of shit.
Yeah,
His answer to the coronavirus was to use prison labor, okay, to make hand sanitizer for profit.
He makes Giuliani look like Sirius the Second. I don't know. I don't like it. I'm sorry.
I don't fucking like this dude at all.
I hear you.
But so I guess he's doing a really good sort of public relations campaign of every day he's getting on TV and he's talking to people about, like, here's what we're going to do for coronavirus.
Oh,
and I
what
think,
a good guy shaking hands. Yeah, during COVID. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So people are like, oh, we don't really feel that Trump is leading in this scenario and Biden is fucking like disappear. I mean, I have to wonder if
between
Biden
kissing
has
his
it.
granddaughter and, like, I don't know when his, like, drugs will make him fall apart, like the Chuck Palahniuk Survivor Man book. But I don't suppose his physical corpse could, like, let alone survive the integration process to president, let alone not disintegrate. I think the Creepy Joe is a pretty scary. I wanted to kind of ask, but I think it's a dead horse to beat. Like, can that guy beat Trump? No, I mean, obviously.
No.
Like, it's not the right thing. I mean, even if
they know that. That's okay. So just to say, my question is this really people being like, oh shit, we now realize Joe Biden is not the guy to beat Trump. Oh shit, what do we do? Or whatever it is, if it's just this like weird sort of like propaganda of the moment, I'm seeing this thing of Andrew Cuomo being elevated to like this new height, and I'm trying to find. I remember taking a picture. I used to when I lived in New York, I used to walk around with a digital camera. This is before like smartphones, or at least before I had a smartphone, and I used to always take pictures of like different newspaper covers and stuff. It was like a really sort of, again, how like Jay Kotz is looking at movies. I'm looking
at Black experience. That's the biggest deal, dude. New York City tabloids and newspapers.
Oh, yeah. It's a
they want you to see. Yeah.
It's a single one. So I'm trying to find, I have this very vivid memory of, I'm pretty sure it's the Village Voice did a cover where Andrew Cuomo is riding a horse and carrying a flag, and they have him in the Crusades, and they have him dressed up like a Knight Templar. And I want to find this image because suddenly and so anyway, that's something that's on my radar and something I'm looking for. Like just this, and not that Village Voice cover means anything other than that's really fucking weird to me, of like, here's this guy suddenly coming out of the cavalry is arriving for the Democrats, of this Knight Templar also showing up in this moment of societal like we did. I think no one would argue that whatever is happening right now, this is a moment of societal transformation. It's why Pelosi's trying to introduce a digital currency right now. It's why Donald Trump is trying to seize his power right now, like to ensure that he gets to hold on to this fucking mess. Everybody's trying to latch on. They see this as a transformative moment, and they're hoping that when the dust settles, they're the one ruling the pile of shit. It's literally goes back to T.S. Eliot's Wasteland. But the fact of like this Knight Templar surfacing at this moment is really, it's just interesting to me. Also, so I really hope everyone watches the film that I made. So if you go to thesyncbook.com/2020, it'll take you to the 3 episodes that are all released so far. And
definitely check them out because they blow my mind. And I'll put the link again. The link will be in the description. Check them out. They're easy to watch and they're awesome.
So after you watch this 3rd episode, I want you to consider some news. So you've seen it. You know how that whole shit about 2011 is about it comes out of Easter, right? It's sort of like the Easter week.
Ishtar bucks,
sort of
yeah.
And Lion King and all this sort of stuff. Lion King and Easter weekend, all this shit. What was right now the #1 film on Netflix is some documentary called Tiger King. So instead of Lion King, we have a Tiger King right now. Is this weird?
Do you know anything about what it's about, or was?
It's some sort of like documentary about not like a Siegfried and Roy, but like
somebody who deals with the lion, the lamb who lays with the lion, basically.
Yeah.
Monkeying around.
And so that's happening right now. And Trump said today that he wants to try and ease all these like restrictions by Easter. And the idea that like we're kind of coming that Easter is playing a part as this sort of turning point in any strategy in this is fascinating. So I just want to throw that. Go ahead, yeah. Sorry, I think you're still muted. Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but you pulled it back to the Hecate thing. It's back to Isis, Ishtar, Astarte. The goddess is the mother of the goddess. This whole thing comes back to Keck no matter what we do. I don't know. When I was looking into Keck the most, I noticed this idea of the frogs before the dawn, right? Because the sun is swallowed. Hecate helps swallow Osiris's child and rebirth them. When the body is pulled apart, then they bring them back to life. Their soul is reincarnated because of this. So it's just, I don't know, it's so brutal that's at the end of the day that this all comes back to Hecate is in Hecate. I mean, I don't know, it's so weird to me, especially Tartarus. Like, I don't know how much you know about my Tartary thing, but I do this whole show about mud flood reset history in Tartaria. Tartarus, I went to Spain to look into it because Tartessus is like a region of Gibraltar where the British control. It's a rock that there are monkeys from Africa because there are caves that go in tunnels underneath the water from Africa to Spain. You can see Africa from Spain. I had no idea, but yeah, you can. And there's tons of Arabic signs in Spain, and the whole place was definitely a lot more African than people.
Where do you see like Morocco?
Oh my God, Morocco is like, okay, so Morocco is more French than African at this point. You go to South Spain, it's African. It's what it is. It's Moorish, it's like, it is what it is. It's the caliphate that has been forced, like the South, to be part of the North, like Spain. They don't even speak the same language, so they have to write Arabic on the walls still. All of the signs have Spanish left or right turns. They have it in Arabic, in Javia to Atapuerca and all of these regions, like all Ahamana and things like that, Almania, like the Alhambra, like Spain is not, there's no, like, and you go to the northeast and they all speak Catalan, you go to northwest, they all speak Galician. It's a place that was forced to be a country, but they have this word that the Hadean Greco tradition, this idea of Hades and Persepolis. The Romans get everything from the Etruscans, which is, you can't read Etruscan, but you look at it backwards in a mirror, and the letters are the same letters right to left. So you start to realize that there's that they took the printed symbols from the Sentinel, Mercury, Times, newspapers, and they turned them and they read those, and so they're reading backwards. So we have this backwards.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy. Etruscan and Roman, if you start to look at the combinations, and Etruscan, right? Rus and Tar. But Hades in Roman is Tartarus. Tartarus is the name, and you start saying, what incarnation? What about that tar in your teeth? What about the tar baby that, the African Akani mystical tradition brought to slavery and that we heard about in Brer Rabbit, which became Bugs Bunny? Right? So we have all of these little stories that all connect to Hecate, and Hecate. And I don't know. It seems pretty crazy to me that this whole thing, no matter what we do, comes back to goddess worship. Victor Pelevin, Generation Pi, the Babylon book, he talks about Russia. And he talks about what happened when the wall, came down and Russia became more and more free, is that there was a Babylonian, people were doing cocaine off the carpet. Like they didn't care because they had like money, and all of a sudden there were people who were trying to worship this golden statue, kind of like that movie, Eyes Wide Shut. And there was somebody who had to be chosen to have sex with the statue, because the Epic of Gilgamesh says that the wild man has sex with Isis, and then he becomes more, when she injects her staff into him, more human, like more alien, really, because he's less natural. So we're getting to this point where this like society is at this transhumanative form, and we see absolute power corrupting everyone. I mean, it makes you wonder, really, where do they want us to go? Because if we don't trust each other, and we're starting to spend all this time, we're saying we're sequestered, but how many people are really spending time with their families? How many of them are just on their computers right now? So aren't we becoming more and more like 2001, a Space Odyssey, at the third act, where we become the Star Child, more and more separated from each other, more and more connected to this other thing? And how is that going to affect us, that if we're connected to the black monolith, as David refers? Like, what if we're connected to this transhumanative transfiguration? Are we going to lose all of these things that we care about? Like caring about our brethren, caring about our
humanity,
our humanity, more importantly, and beyond that, our whole, like, we're not just humans having spiritual experience, we're spirit having human experience, right? Like, so what about all the animals and everything else, but even machines? Like, what about paper that hasn't been printed in 20 years? Are we going to put it at the top of the printer sheet? Like, where are we at with caring? That's a good question right now, if we're becoming so used to allowing people to die. Where do we want society to go? Is this just, if we really believe this is a transition, like, what do we really want? And like, not just what we're getting rid of, not that I don't believe in this and I don't believe in that. What do we really want, to be the future?
That's a great question. I mean, so just to say, I mean, I've been watching over the past week, sort of the coronavirus stuff, and I think to one extent everyone's just overwhelmed, right? You can see the sort of the stress that's hitting everyone, and myself included. I don't remove myself from this. This is a stressful situation. I don't care where your fucking politics. I don't care if you're some QAnon guy that's hoping that like this is all for the best. Like, there's a part of you that's freaking out because like there's just so much uncertainty about this, of like, oh, might you get sick, or is this a thing? Is this the fucking New World Order? Is this a fucking disease? Am I just being played? Am I prepared enough? Am I this? Am I that? Everyone is feeling that anxiety and stress right now. What I am hoping is that once if this continues for a little bit, that let's say we're quarantined for a few weeks, and as you said, people are on their computers, I know you had shared that thing of like, oh, there's the possibility of the internet getting shut down. I mean, that's certainly possible. At this point, nothing would fucking surprise me. Like I said, it's a scary moment.
It happened in China. It happened in Iran. It happened in Egypt. I wouldn't be too surprised if it happened in the Philippines. But yeah, if it happened in the United States, it seems like that surprises people more than anything. The idea of the internet being shut down for a few days. Oh, but what about San Francisco or New York during storms? There's the winter of New York where Tinder and Tumblr were not functioning and people freaked out. So who's to say what happens if Google servers and Bluehost servers and Facebook servers, if they don't access the intranet, then there will be a lot less internet to access, at least, right? I mean,
correct, yeah. And I think we're already seeing that. I don't know about you, but I've experienced so many internet issues in the last week. It was like weird things, like just like not loading right.
Everything's really slow right now to a fault. Like things are about 20% of notice in terms of their bandwidth, and they're saying it's because the internet's overcrowded. Well, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, and that's such a bullshit story to me, because even if you have a bunch of people fucking like teleworking and things like that,
yeah,
I could see that you have more people like that. But I'm sorry, you're telling, like, again, the idea that Amazon is overwhelmed by like people's doing. So wait a second, you're able to deliver an eraser to me in 24 hours, a 25-cent eraser I could get shipped fucking overnight. But you're telling me that you can't coordinate your warehouse to ship like basic goods. So you've instead of having this huge selection of goods, you've now said we're just going to deliver some like food and basic supplies, and you can't figure out how to deliver that. I just don't buy it. You're telling me that this internet can't handle this capacity of like it was handling everyone utilizing everything regularly. If anything, there's less activity. I don't have like. Oh, think of all the restaurants and everything that's using credit card machines and online billing that's not being utilized right now. You're telling me like somehow there's where this is stressing out our capacity, that like someone was telling me, like I had a power outage last week and I was in a storm at the moment, but then people are like, oh well, the power grid is really stressed. How so? Half the buildings aren't occupied. Right? If none of these businesses are open, what is the stress that we're putting on this infrastructure?
Right.
I don't buy that.
If the banks collapse and the housing market collapses, then pretty soon, it's the consequences. Pretty soon, like the market will be so bad, everyone will be able to afford a house.
And that would be a disastrous for so many.
Right. That's what it feels like.
So that's where we have hopes. If we're talking about like hopes that come out of this.
Luckily. Sorry, go ahead.
Just to say, like, I mean, okay, I don't care if you're a Trump supporter or a Biden supporter. When you see that like 4 senators sold off their stocks, the week before the market crash, I feel like that's a pretty unifying. Sure. Like that should be a unifying point of activism, right? Like, hey, we all agree these guys belong in fucking jail, right? You see people coming out of the woodwork to be like, oh, actually, we should support our hospitals, and maybe there should be a pause on like rent or mortgages or different utility. Like, how do we these more sort of like socialist ideas that so many on the quote unquote right would reject are now suddenly going like,
I mean, it's really funny because now they want to use it. They want to have a UBI, right? Like Yang is gone and Trump is going to offer you a universal basic income. So don't tell me that socialism isn't part of the right's plan, because that's how Germany played it.
Right. How many I've had to hear for the last 2 years, everyone goes like, actually the Nazis were like national socialists.
Yeah, true sock. Well, this is actually important also, right? Because there is a difference between Marxism and Marxism also is written by like 1,000 people. I think David would be the first to talk about the different people like Blavatsky and Jeremy Bentham that were involved with the pen name of Marx. But there's also a truth to this idea that Hitler had a different kind of socialism, and his idea was that some people should rise to the top, and so we should give them the opportunity to. And that's a very important point in a different kind of socialism. If you're saying Elon Musk wants to make it so that people who can, experience a high-end triple-digit IQ, Like we get the kid in Africa and we say, okay, we'll give you rice, you know, and we give the kid in China, and we take them all together and we say, or you guys can have access to computers and machines and money to do these experiments. Well, I mean, what have we really done? We've taken people and we've turned them into property, and we've decided they're resources, and we've refined those resources, and we've fed our resources out of a trough. And that is a different kind of socialism. That's Owenism instead of Marxism. Robert Owens, and you know, he was a corporatist. He said, yeah, like don't let your workers go home. Just build a home here, and don't let them drink. You know, and put fluoride in the water so their teeth are real strong. You know, like all of it is kind of this idea of the difference between top up. Top up, yes, but top down is the way they present it. Socialism, and bottom up socialism, which is really bottom down, because you have this idea of fuck the bourgeoisie, let's have proletariats. Like, let's get rid of anything that resembles neoclassical architecture or bourgeoisie architecture. Let's make it so that everyone is in a ditch and we have no child left behind because we don't go anywhere. So there is two sides of it at the same time. But you know, fair enough. Like, we don't want really to escape this idea of Marxism. Neither one of us, because you look, you know, neo conservatives are conserving what, and how do they conserve it? They you know, Kissinger wanted China to exist. Communism, Marxism, neoconservatism is at least in my school where I was taught in California in political science, in community college, and in a number of places which are political science, they referred to neoconservatives as a type of international political Marxist, because they wanted to have a feudal state where they control all the resources through authoritarian military. And they divvied up as each according to their own needs, not their wants. So, to be fair, I mean, it is a kind of Marxism. It is a kind of socialism. It is this idea that you won't need to buy a Hummer or Humvee if you can take the train to work every day. So there is a practicality to socialism, but it's not in the effort to be humanistic or to be empathic, or there's no care for you, you know. And this is a scary thing, mainly because at some point, if they decide they're less interested in humans succeeding at their own art projects, let alone at humans succeeding at all, you know, maybe they want mammoths to run through their territory, then you as property become less valuable. That's the biggest concern, I think, about letting them decide how to refine us as people. And, you know, as a state, if they consent to education, what is it they're teaching us? Are they teaching us what to think or how to think? These are the little things that we should be concerned about, no matter who's in charge, you know?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's that sort of was like covered a lot of ground, but I think that at least that end note of like, no matter who's in charge, these are good questions to ask of like, what are your intentions? What are you real? And you know, again, I was saying, like, I think intentionality is important, but as we also said, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So intentionality isn't the end all be all. It's what are your actions? What are the fruits of your actions? That's why I was saying, like, you know, I hope someone who's listening who is sympathetic to Trump, you know, looks at like, well, seriously, what are the fruits of his actions? Even if you think that he really is looking out for you, which I just don't get it. But if you really do think that, what are the fruits of those actions? And not like some far off promise of things will be different once we can get, you know, it's the same. You know, what do we really want here? And I think this is a chance. It's a chance for people to pay attention and to ask some of these questions, and I think maybe find some common ground. I was given that, like, the four senators example was to say, like, I can't imagine anyone on either side of the quote unquote aisle being able to defend that kind of stuff. So, you know, it's. I think there is an opportunity here for people to see. You know, you mentioned Marx. Like, I've seen people talking about this idea. Excuse me, of like hey, it's really funny how the CEOs or the heads of these industries are not actually that all that essential anymore. It's the workers are the ones who create the value, and that's become very apparent to many people very quickly. That sort of little aspect of Marxist philosophy is suddenly being felt by many people across the globe. Now, as you point out, that can easily be turned to either a neoconservative Marxism or some sort of I don't know, a more modern sort of bullshit liberal wannabe Marxism. Again, I think everyone's going to try and steer this to their own ends. But the fact that we're all sort of seeing these things in real time, there's a part of me that remains ever so slightly hopeful of, wow, everyone's home, everyone can kind of see what's happening in real time, and the distractions, your usual distractions are gone. Granted, you're distracted by the virus itself, but your usual bullshit is kind of off the table, and everyone is experiencing a readjustment of priorities. If you're used to going to the gym or the club or just going to the fucking grocery store, whatever you're used to doing, you're probably not doing it right now, except for watching TV and maybe checking your phone. And now suddenly, amongst all that other news information is, oh, this guy, Donald Trump wanted to use billions of dollars to give to corporations. Nancy Pelosi wants to take billions of dollars for her friends. Oh, this person sold their stocks. This person did. This corporation, we're talking about this health crisis, and somebody figures out how to 3D print ventilator screens, and this corporation wants to sue them because, hey, that's our copyrighted, patented material. It's pretty apparent who looks shitty very quickly in those situations, right? So,
and what's going to happen too. I mean, we've seen what happened with music. So clearly 3D printed guns and ventilation masks are going to exist. And it's no longer a question to vote whether or not things should exist. You have no say. Your only consent is whether or not you have ventilation mask or gun. And are you going to be a participant, or are you just going to let everyone shoot at you and gas you? I mean, that's a weirder place to be as a voter, because you're like, I'm voting for myself finally.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Well, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your.
No.
I just received word that the Imperial Senate will no longer be of any concern to us, and I've just received word that the Empire has dissolved the Council permanently. The last remnants of the old Republic have been swept away, and the Emperor will maintain control without the bureaucracy through regional governors who have direct control over their territories. This is a line from Star Wars.
It sure is. I've been thinking about that a lot. Yeah. Hey, so if I can make one again, and I don't want to keep bringing this back to Trump.
Go do your thing, man. We're living in this world,
Yeah. Well, so I just want to say, I would hope, particularly, you mentioned Ron Paul and libertarians. I'm sure you and I was in that. I spent a lot of time and a lot of effort for Ron Paul. I've spent a lot of headspace and energy in that direction. I have a lot of sympathy for these, I guess we kind of consider right-leaning ideologies and all this sort of stuff. I just want to say, for everyone who says they want, small government, or anyone who's afraid of abuse of power, it would be an abuse of power if it's Obama or Pelosi in control of that martial law. I hope that we all acknowledge it would be an abuse of power if Trump was the one in control of that.
It's fully about left or right or up and down.
Yeah, an empire, up, no matter an empire and an abuse and a seizing of power isn't acceptable by any politician, by any figurehead, by any of these things. And I hope, as much as anyone could hope their guy is well intentioned, I really hope this moment is a wake-up call for people to say, hey, I don't like that my guy, I don't want my guy using this opportunity to seize power, to seize
It
more
should
power.
be about checks and balances, because again, whether it's left or right, channeled stereo, still all the same song playing, and like the idea of it being turned up right now instead of turned down so that we can have a conversation is a bad idea. We should be talking about these things instead of just letting them happen. At least, like, if they happen, we'll have had this conversation while we were prohibited less. We were allowed to do so. And if we don't have this conversation now, we're talking literally about suspending habeas corpus and the 10 amendments. If that happens, I mean, we've seen Katrina, it was with the guns, but if that was with your own ability to say, I don't like what's going on, that will change the way you look at things. And I really believe so. It won't be just this outside threat anymore. So, like, think about, do you really want this idea to just take away, even for a little while, because who knows when it will come back, your ability to say how you feel, like, are you really saying you don't think that's important anymore? And I get it, because there's a lot of people that say things you don't want to hear, but at the same time, don't you remember Daniel Webster? Don't you want to defend to the death the right to say so, like Voltaire? Don't you want people to have these opinions? So you have this spectrum. Like, I think even as a non-Jesuit, I don't know if you would say you're a non-spiritual person at all. You sound very spiritual, but as someone who said, well, looking at this metric that they've applied of right versus what is wrong, like, do you really want to be careful enough? Like, if you're going to be careful, do you want to fall into the category of the things that you're metricing against? I mean, it seems so dangerous. I don't know. So I fully hear you on that, and I don't think that anyone would say it's a side thing. I mean, I feel like an alien at a baseball game, more like a prison football game.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's so hard because you and I both know the minute one of us says something that's regarded as partisan in any way, it turns off people's listening, immediately. So
but at the same time, you have to accept this idea that, like, both parties right now, Rand Paul has been playing basketball with the Senate, then both parties are about to collapse into like 30 or 40 people. So we all know they're all the same people. So it's about to become one party. I think we all know that's what's coming. So it's time to take the blue and yellow purple pills instead, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, my friend Andras made a comment that he said, he was thinking about it. He said, like, oh, most of these people that are running for president, like your Biden, your Sanders, even Trump, Pelosi, how many of them are like over 70, if not over 65, even over 70 years old? He's like, take, Mitch McConnell, take 10 of the most high profile politicians, most of them are older people. He's like, if none of them fucking die from coronavirus,
I know, right? Coronavirus is looking at them like a greasy, like Mr. Lumps and like Rainbow Bright with his like Converse. He's like, yeah, I want a hug. Yeah, they want Biden back. You know what? Coronavirus is looking at Biden as sexually deviantly as Biden is looking at other people. That's where it's at.
Oh yeah. And I won't be sad if Biden gets taken out by this, but I also know what kind of chaos and turmoil would come out of that.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
I'm not necessarily hoping, for him to die in this,
right,
because this might be bad timing, but
yeah,
won't,
like
I won't shed any fucking tears for him either. So
right, yeah.
So
I mean, in other words, you wish him well. Very good, very good. All right, well, I think we've hit like a metronomic, like, is there anything that you want to share about your show, like, or anything like important points that you should point out, like about the Sync Book Press and things?
No, I guess I'll say this: if you guys are stuck, if anyone's stuck in quarantine and doesn't know what to listen to, at some point I took the paywall down on my website a few years ago. There are years of archives. I mean, there's 200 episodes of Always Record. That's a podcast I did. That's free. There's
Genius. There's
hundreds of episodes of 42 minutes. That was Doug and Will's show. There's so much content on that site that is just totally free.
And time to listen to it. It's amazing.
Yeah, if you're looking for or anything to kill time with, or looking for
media content, minds in our generation all around the world come together in this. It's really always on record. An amazing show.
Well, I also, it's funny you use that expression of some of the greatest minds of our generation. Is particularly in 2016, I have thought about Ginsberg's quoting that very often. So if you go back to the beginning of the always like the sort of sync book archives, you can track the progression of people as they lost their fucking minds, because I have seen some of the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical. So it's
oh, hell yeah, man. I mean, that's our whole deal. I think it's a funny thing. Like, we're the survivors of the MK Ultra generation, the MK Ultra sound. Like, it's pretty cool that we're still alive. And yeah, and that's one of the other, that's kind of what I meant when I said you're an expert and I respect you. I was like, okay, well, this guy survived it, and he's still thinking thoughts that I think are, sound true. Like, he's not just completely lost. So that's, yeah, like, we have seen a lot of people that have fallen by the wayside, and we try to keep other people from doing the same.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that I guess that would be the note I'd end on, is that's there for anybody who wants it. And other than that, man, it was really good talking to you. And this was a really good to kind of like touch base in this way and find some really good common ground. So I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, no, I appreciate it so much, man. Like, I've been really looking forward to the point, of doing something on this. And it's so weird how the world has worked. I think that we've gotten to this point, but it's good to hear where you're coming from, I think, for a lot of reasons. And I think that a lot of people looking at the consequences should look at intuition and intention. And fundamentally, like, it's the most important point. So I appreciate that this is the thing that you're wrestling with as well. So thank you for taking the time, man. And like, yeah, anytime you ever want to do anything, like, let me know, because like, you're always doing amazing things. So, and I'll hope that people will check out the links at the bottom of the screen and check these out. So keep up the good work, and let everyone keep your chance at watching you, man. It's great that you're still making material.
Hell yeah, it's gotten harder. I used to just fucking crank out content, and now now I feel like a lot more responsibility to be extra thoughtful and careful with everything I put out, totally. Both from a sociological and a magical perspective, all the different things, and then sometimes just like the energy level. Like, I did experience a burnout. It's why I stopped producing content for a little while, but yeah, my mind is still very much in the game of trying to make sense of this and trying to help as many people as I can get through this safely. So best of luck to everybody listening. And, I think if we all hold on to our humanity, we're going to see some scary shit in the next few weeks. No matter what, it's going to be a rough period. And I just hope hang on to humanity and remember to care about your fellow man above anything else, and don't let anyone fucking plow us under, no matter who they say they're aligned with. Let's take care of each other and do our best in this.
This is the ultimate test. Do unto your fellow man and woman and humanity and spiritual being having human experience. Don't be a slave to selfishness. This is the moment. This is your chance. Seriously, I totally agree. I hope that people are listening to that. I appreciate you coming on. Thanks a lot, man.
Hey, thank you. Have a great night, okay?
Peace out, man.
Peace. Talk to you soon.
Exorcist.